Chapter 626. If I'm not Yu Qianqiu, then who do you think I am? Yu Qianqiu retorted, amused and annoyed at the same time. That's not what I meant. The person behind the table stood up and waved his hand. Just then, a person sitting in the corner of the stone room walked over and smiled. We didn't mean anything else. We just wanted to confirm something. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him. It was the same person whom Guan Zhongkai addressed as senior uncle the last time he came here. He was here to make a fortune, not to cause trouble. Miaoyi nodded and waved his hand. A green flame dragon flew out, illuminating the entire stone room in a dazzling green light. The flame dragon circled around the table, and the table was instantly reduced to ashes. After that, the green flame dragon burrowed into Yu Qianqiu's sleeve and disappeared. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle's pupil shrank. He couldn't feel any heat from the flame dragon, but it had easily burned a wooden table to ashes. What a powerful technique to control fire. The person who was sitting at the table looked at the ground speechlessly. The crowd in the passageway had gathered and blocked the entrance. Do I need to use any other methods to prove it? Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and asked. I've long heard of the Starflame fire technique. Now that I've seen it for myself, it certainly lives up to its reputation. Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle praised. He then turned to the cultivator holding the jade archive and said, What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and help Mr. Yu with the jade archive. The cultivator nodded repeatedly. After he had Yu Qianqiu inject some true essence into the archive, he quickly inscribed the incantation on the jade archive. Yu Qianqiu took the jade archive and asked, How much? Guan Zhongkai's senior uncle glanced at the crowd outside and smiled. Someone knew that Mr. Yu was coming, and has already paid for you. Oh, Yu Qianqiu didn't stand on ceremony. He took the jade archive and left. The crowd outside quickly made way for him to pass. After he was far away, someone asked, Is he really that butcher Yu Qianqiu? That's right. After offending so many people, how could he dare to come here instead of hiding? You don't understand. Now that he has Wen Lanfeng's support, there's nothing to be afraid of. Tsk. As the number one expert below the soul formation stage, he can be considered a well-known figure in the cultivation world. Guan Zhongkai's martial uncle shouted at the crowd, Disperse, don't block the way and hinder others from entering. After the crowd dispersed, he immediately found the right direction and sent a telepathic message, informing them that Yu Qianqiu had arrived. As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived, the people in charge of the 8 entrances had already been informed of his arrival. After exiting the cave, Yu Qianqiu once again saw the bustling cornucopia. He only took a casual glance and immediately saw a figure appear in front of him. It was Sikongju. When the people below saw Sikongju's appearance, they couldn't help but stop to watch. This was the first time Sikongju saw Yu Qianqiu. He sized him up and asked indifferently, You're Yu Qianqiu? He didn't have a good impression of Yu Qianqiu. Shaming his disciple Guan Zhongkai was the same as slapping his face. He's Yu Qianqiu. The people below were in an uproar. Yu Qianqiu is here? Yu Qianqiu secretly found it funny. This guy was still calling me a senior earlier, but now he's acting like an expert. He frowned and said, Report your name. I don't casually talk to strangers. Sikongju's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Qianqiu and said in a deep voice, World Commerce Association, Sikongju. Oh, I've heard of your name for a long time. I am indeed Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and asked curiously, Do you have any business with me? Senior Niu asked me to find you. I believe you should know what's going on. Sikongju said, If it wasn't for the other party carrying something important, why would he be so patient with Yu Qianqiu? Oh, I understand. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said in astonishment, Are we going to talk here? Sikongju pointed at the god of Wealth Peak and said, Follow me. Yu Qianqiu nodded, and the two of them flew towards the god of Wealth Peak. Wow, that butcher actually dared to come to Cornucopia. Someone exclaimed and the crowd immediately became lively. The news of Yu Qianqiu's arrival quickly spread. On the god of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong smiled as he looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was looking around, and said, I am Yin Baikong. You are the rising star of the cultivation world, Yu Qianqiu? Haha, you are indeed a talent, not bad, not bad. Ah, You are one of the top 10 experts of the cultivation world, Senior Ian? Yu Qianqiu steadied his head and asked in disbelief. Haha, it's just an empty title, not worth mentioning. Ian Baikong appeared to be amiable. Greetings, Senior Ian. Yu Qianqiu bowed and stood up. He suddenly said to Sikongju, you should also learn more from your master. In terms of cultivation, your master is much higher than you. But look at Senior Ian, he speaks so politely. Unlike you, you act like you want to kill the moment you see him. Sikongju was stunned by his words. Then, his face twitched and his eyes glared at Ian Baikong. This guy was telling on him. Before they left the mountain, Ian Baikong had specially told him to be polite to Yu Qianqiu. As expected, Ian Baikong's face slightly sank and asked indifferently, Sikongju, what did you do to Yu Qianqiu? Just what is going on? Even if Sikongju killed Yu Qianqiu, Ian Baikong wouldn't feel bad about it. But not listening to him was something to think about. Master, I didn't do anything to him. Sikongju forcefully suppressed his anger. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Senior Ian, don't misunderstand. He really didn't do anything to me. It's just that the way he spoke made me feel uncomfortable. He then bowed and said, I have also seen Senior Ian. Junior doesn't dare to disturb Senior anymore. I will take my leave now. He turned and left. Leaving just like that? Ian Baikong was startled. Originally, he wanted to scold Sikongju for putting on an act for Yu Qianqiu, but it seemed like there was no need to do so now. He immediately called out, Yu Qianqiu, please wait. Yu Qianqiu turned around and said, Senior, do you have any other instructions? Ian Baikong's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Nyoyid never contacted him? Suppressing the anxiety in his heart, he smiled and asked, Yu Qianqiu, did Brother Nyoyid not tell you anything? Oh, I almost forgot. My memory isn't that good. Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead and said, Senior is asking about the 7 treasure Dan, right? Ian Baikong's heart that was in his throat finally calmed down. He breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, It's all right, it's good that you remembered. Let's settle this matter first. With a wave of his hand, 10 bulging storage pouches landed on the bluestone platform at the side. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the 10 storage pouches and scratched his head. Senior, can I discuss something with you? Ian Baikong smiled and said, What's the matter? It's like this. Yu Qianqiu said embarrassedly, Senior's World Commerce Chamber of Commerce is rich and powerful. A mere 7 treasure Dan definitely won't be able to enter your eyes. And this junior also wants to do some small business in cornucopia. Why don't you let this junior sell this 7 treasures pill myself? How about it? Ian Baikong was speechless. 5,007 treasure Dan was still a small business? Kid, aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? He tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face and said, Young man, this is not right of you. You must keep your promise. You must do what you promised. You must not have any improper thoughts. Haha. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, I'm just casually saying it. If you don't want to, then forget it. Ian Baikong took out a storage pouch reluctantly and took out a pill. Immediately, he saw a 7-colored pill halo lingering between his fingers. It was exactly the same as the 7 treasure Dan he had seen before. Even Ian Baikong couldn't fake this kind of top-quality pill halo, so it was naturally the real deal. Ian Baikong injected his divine sense into the storage pouch and frowned. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, How many 7 treasure Dan did Nyoyid give you? Yu Qianqiu said with a guilty expression, They should all be in the storage pouch. This kid is trying to play tricks. Ian Baikong's face sank and said, That can't be right. There are only 4,000 here. Brother Nyo clearly told me that he gave you 5,000. Where did the other 1,000 go? Sikongju stared at him coldly, ready to seize the opportunity to flip out. Oh, I almost forgot. My memory isn't that good. Yu Qianqiu took out another storage pouch from his chest and said with an awkward smile, I was afraid that it wouldn't be safe to put all the pills in one storage pouch, so I took 1,000 and put them elsewhere. Finished speaking, he reluctantly handed the storage pouch over to Ian Baikong. Ian Baikong took the storage pouch and checked it. The remaining 1,000 pills were indeed in the pouch. He then revealed a satisfied smile and put them all away. He pointed at the 10 storage pouches on the bluestone platform and said, "Those are the 10 billion high-grade spirit stones I promised Brother Neo. Go and count them. We're done with the goods." Yu Qianqiu walked over and sat on the bluestone platform. He counted the pouches one by one and muttered, "No matter how much money there is, it's not mine. I have to give it all to Senior Neo." After confirming the amount, he put away the storage pouch and said to Yin Baikong, "Senior, next time, you can ask Senior Neo to give you the 7 treasure pills directly. It will save both you and me trouble. There's no point in letting it pass through my hands." Yin Baikong smiled slightly. He could see that this kid was making so many problems because he wasn't satisfied that he didn't get any benefits in the process. However, what he said was exactly what he wanted. If the 7 treasure pills passed through this kid's hands, he wouldn't be at ease. It would be better to trade with Niu Yud. He nodded and said, Since you said it like that, then it's settled. I'll talk to Brother Niu about this." He then turned to Sikong Ju and said, "Sikong, send Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. Remember to give him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Don't let him work hard for nothing." Sikong Ju accepted the order and brought Yu Qianqiu down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, he really gave him 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. After that, he didn't care about him anymore and left in a flash. This matter already had nothing to do with him. Only a ghost would care about him. Of course, it was also because of Niu Yud that he didn't beat him up. Yu Qianqiu weighed the storage pouch in his hand and chuckled. It was worth it to waste 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. He put it away and walked towards the bustling street. Chapter 627. At the exit to the street, other than a few World Chamber of Commerce disciples standing guard, there were also 4 people looking around. Normally, outsiders were not allowed to stay on this road to God of Wealth Peak. However, these 4 people were Niu Yud's subordinates and enjoyed privileges that outsiders did not have. Yu Qianqiu walked to the back of the 4 and stopped. The 4 of them also turned to look at him. They were all a little confused. This person didn't look like a disciple of the World Chamber of Commerce. So why did he come down from God of Wealth Peak? Yu Qianqiu smiled at the 4 people. "I am Yu Qianqiu. Senior Niu must have already told you." The 4 people looked at each other and no longer had any doubts. The person who knew the content of their conversation with Niu Yud was naturally Yu Qianqiu. So they bowed together and said, "Greetings, Mr. Yu." Then Tianyi cupped his fists and said, "Senior Niu told us to wait here for Mr. and to listen to Mr.'s orders." "I know. Senior Niu has told me. The 4 of you follow me." Yu Qianqiu instructed and walked into the street. The 4 people followed behind. The World Chamber of Commerce disciples guarding the road exchanged glances. One of them immediately rushed up the mountain to report. Walking along the street, one could hear people discussing Yu Qianqiu's arrival. However, there were not many people who knew Yu Qianqiu. They did not know that Yu Qianqiu was walking among them. Yu Qianqiu felt comfortable all over. He was not as conspicuous as Niu Yud. Without everyone's attention, he felt much more at ease. However, because of Tianyi and the other 3 people, there were still many people pointing at him, who was walking in front of them. "Tianyi, where do you think we should stay?" Yu Qianqiu asked casually. Tianyi immediately followed and replied, "There is a residence on God of Wealth Peak that Senior Niu wants. The environment is not bad. If Mr. is willing, you can stay with us there." "That place?" Yu Qianqiu thought for a moment and shook his head. "Don't stay there from today onwards. We will go to a safer place to stay." "Yes," Tianyi replied. However, the 4 people exchanged glances. They were all confused. They did not know where cornucopia could be safer than God of Wealth Peak. Isn't that Yu Qianqiu?" Someone suddenly shouted from the moving crowd. Everyone's gazes followed and stared. "So he's Yu Qianqiu." The stream of people came to a standstill, and discussions immediately broke out. This was bad. They were immediately caught in a traffic jam. The group of 5 had become a rare animal. Everyone wanted to see what Yu Qianqiu looked like. The path ahead was also blocked. Yu Qianqiu did not say anything else. His body emitted an azure flame that wrapped around him, and he walked forward with the flame in his hand. It was a very frightening sight. The scorching heat wave cleared the way forward, scaring the onlookers into squeezing in all directions, immediately clearing the way forward. Both sides of the street were instantly filled with curses. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered to care about them. In any case, there weren't many good people here, and they deserved to be burned to death. He put away the green flames and continued on his own path, letting the others curse him. If someone scolded him too impudently, he didn't mind killing one or two. Who asked him to have Wen Lanfeng supporting him now? It would be a waste not to use such a big name. Amano and the other three looked at each other. The name of the butcher of the cultivation world was indeed well-deserved. Following Yu Qianqiu, they crossed a few streets and stopped in front of a shop. When the four of them saw the emblem of a dark green orchid, they suddenly realized. That's right. Didn't Wen Lanfeng come to Cornucopia? Living in the one family's shop was definitely safer than living on the God of Wealth Peak. The shop assistant welcomed the 5 people who came in with a smile and said, "You." Noticing that a group of people were looking here and pointing, he was a little puzzled, so he couldn't help but change his words. "Are the 5 of you here to sell something?" Yu Qianqiu glanced at the shop and found that the Wen family's shop was simply a grocery store with all kinds of things. It seemed that the Wen family didn't have any specialty, and it was difficult to make a lot of money without something special. It was probably just a contact point. He shook his head and said to the assistant, "I'm Yu Qianqiu, and I'm here to visit Senior One." Yu Qianqiu. The assistant looked outside and immediately understood. The shopkeeper of the shop came a few steps and asked, "Are you Yu Qianqiu?" "I'm the real deal." Yu Qianqiu smiled. The shopkeeper looked serious and waved his hand, saying, "Come with me." Then he took them to the backyard and asked them to wait for a while. He ran upstairs to report. After a while, a head popped out of a window upstairs with a sullen face and shouted to the people below, "Get up here." It was none other than Nongzhu. "Have you taken the wrong medicine?" Yu Qianqiu immediately retorted. He turned back to the 4 people and said, "You wait here. I'll go and see what's going on." The 4 people agreed, but they were secretly amazed. They all saw the man just now. It was Mr. Nongzhu, who looked for Niu Yid last time. Yu Qianqiu dared to contradict him like this. He was very powerful. Lu Yanqing heard Yu Qianqiu's words upstairs and suddenly laughed. She asked Nongzhu, "Is it Yu Qianqiu?" Nongzhu nodded with a sullen face. Wen Lanfeng couldn't help laughing. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "I've heard of this guy for a long time. I'd like to see what's different about him today." The 3 people all stared at the door. Unexpectedly, they heard dong-dong footsteps everywhere on the floor below. Then they heard someone scolding below. "Damn it, we went to the wrong floor. The 4th floor is the top floor. This is the 3rd floor." The 3 people looked at each other. Lu Yanqing's face was blocked by the green gauze. They couldn't see any change, but they could hear unbearable laughter coming from inside. Wen Lanfeng just laughed twice, and Nongzhu's face couldn't be gloomy anymore. She scolded with a somewhat twisted face, "Bastard, what a shame." Dong 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 footsteps sounded outside. A head popped in and muttered while observing. "Why does a shabby shop have so many rooms? It's like a maze, don't you think?" When he turned his head to the left, he found Nongzhu and the other 2 people standing inside. He swallowed his words and asked weakly, "Can I come in?" When Lanfeng smiled and said, "Come in." He stared at him curiously. He wanted to see what was so special about this disciple, who could attract Bai Changchun's attention. Yu Qianqiu's face became serious. He walked to Wen Lanfeng and saluted. "You must be the famous Senior One. No need to be so polite." Wen Lanfeng laughed and said, "You are also famous." "Alas, that's just a false reputation, not worth mentioning." Yu Qianqiu behaved very modestly. When he saw Lu Yanqing, whose face was covered by the green gauze, he pretended not to know her. He asked knowingly, "May I know who this female senior is?" But she and Senior Wen are a perfect match. They are a perfect match. Is she Mrs. Wen? Nongzhu's expression twitched. This guy really knew how to flatter. Wen Lanfeng was probably flattered. Tilting his head to look, Wen Lanfeng was indeed staring at Yu Qianqiu with admiration. It wasn't just ordinary admiration. It was simply admiration. But Lu Yanqing did not accept his feelings. She asked with deep meaning, You haven't even seen my face. How do you know we are a perfect match? Have you seen me somewhere? Her voice was like the sound of a clear spring in a deep valley, like the song of an oriole. Damn! Even her voice was so beautiful. No wonder she was the most beautiful woman in the world. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Then he waved his hand and said, No. It's the first time for me to see Senior One, let alone Mrs. One. But your temperament is like a dragon and a phoenix, with the charm of a zither and a harp. People with discerning eyes can tell you are husband and wife at first sight. Nongzhu stared at the beam and rolled her eyes when she heard Madam One. When Lanfeng kept looking at Lu Yanqing, and then at himself. It seemed that he really found the beauty of a dragon and a phoenix, and the charm of a harp and a harp. Well, don't talk nonsense anymore. Lu Yanqing said unhappily, I'm not Mrs. One. I'm Lu Yanqing of Lingfang Valley. The eyes behind the green veil stared at Yu Qianqiu, sizing him up. She couldn't understand. Everyone said that he was refined, but how did he end up being such a bootlicker? Was this really the talented Yu Qianqiu? If Nongzhu was not present, she would even suspect that this person was an impostor of Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu had a look of astonishment as he said, So it's the world-renowned miracle hands of rejuvenation, divine physician Senior Lu. Sorry for the disrespect. Then he bowed to Wen Lanfeng and said, Senior Wen, please forgive me for not knowing. I was too reckless just now. Please don't take it to heart. Lu Yanqing was completely speechless. She thought it was not a coincidence that this guy could be in a brothel. When Lanfeng said with a warm face, Those who don't know are not guilty. You can't be blamed for not knowing. Yu Qianqiu immediately took advantage of the situation and said, Since you have forgiven me, I have a request. I hope you can agree. Nongzhu glanced at him coldly and thought, Here it comes. Here it comes. I knew this guy would never be ingratiating for no reason. He must be hiding something. When Lanfeng's first impression of Yu Qianqiu was very good. It was rare to see such an attractive junior after so many years. No wonder he could enter by Changchun's eyes. There must be a reason. She immediately nodded and said, What's the matter? As long as I can do it. Here's the thing. Yu Qianqiu explained with a bitter smile. Senior One, you know that I have offended a lot of people in the cultivation world. Now that I have come to Cornucopia, I really can't find a safe place to stay. I wonder if I can stay in your One family shop? I see that you have a lot of empty rooms here. Nongzhu was suspicious. This guy had found a free bodyguard. He pretended to be Niu Yud, and was like a fish in water in Cornucopia. Who dared to provoke him? Now he suddenly restored his true appearance. Was something going to happen in Cornucopia? Thinking of this, he immediately thought of Zi and Furong who were still on the God of Wealth Peak. He immediately decided to bring them here as soon as possible. It was right to follow this cunning guy. He did not know that Lu Yanqing was also suspicious. That's it. When Lanfeng was surprised, and felt that the request was too simple. It's not just me. There are also 4 of my attendants down there. Can they all stay together? Yu Qianqiu asked. When Lanfeng laughed and said, This is nothing. You can all live in. Chapter 628. Haha, thank you, Senior. Yu Qianqiu showed a sincere smile. But when he looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing, he shook his head slightly, showing a look of regret, and muttered, What a pity, what a pity. No one knew what he was talking about, but everyone understood what he meant. When Lanfeng was very emotional, he admired Bai Changchun from the bottom of his heart. How could he find such an outstanding disciple? Why didn't my Wen family have such an outstanding disciple? Otherwise, I would have taught him a good lesson. Lu Yanqing, who was in the green gauze, bit her teeth lightly. Logically speaking, she should not be too calculative with this junior. But for some inexplicable reason, she felt her teeth itch. Don't play tricks here. Nongzhu sneered at Yu Qianqiu, and then said to Wen Lanfeng, Wen Lanfeng, the 2 girls I brought are living with Yin Bai Kong. I'm a little worried, I'd better bring them here. All right. When Lanfeng nodded, Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned, and asked suspiciously, You brought 2 girls here? Who? Nongzhu rolled her eyes and snorted. Who cares who they are? They are not as important as your spring slumber loft. After that she teleported. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. It seemed that Nongzhu already knew about his relationship with Yenyu. Thinking of Furong of Shuntian Island and Wu Lixue of the Wu family, he couldn't help but reflect. Later, he sighed sadly, seeing that he couldn't do anything about the previous one. Lu Yanqing knew his background, and her eyes were hiding behind the green veil to observe. When Lanfeng didn't understand what Nongzhu meant, and asked in surprise, Yu Qianqiu, what's your relationship with the spring slumber loft? Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses, and said with a bitter smile, something that shouldn't have happened, anyway, it's all my fault. He casually said, when Lanfeng saw that he didn't want to talk about it, so she didn't ask anymore. After the news of Yu Qianqiu's arrival in the cornucopia spread, all the forces were ready to make a move. To the various demigod realm lords, Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation was nothing to them. What moved them was the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. Hence, they all sent people to keep an eye on him. This brat had been hiding for so long. Since he had appeared, they couldn't let him go. Although he had Wen Lanfeng's support, Wen Lanfeng couldn't always protect him, right? As long as they left the cornucopia, there would be times when they would be alone. At that time, he would personally make a move and capture Yu Qianqiu would be a piece of cake, and no one would know about it. As long as Wen Lanfeng did not know who captured Yu Qianqiu, he could not support Yu Qianqiu even if he wanted to. Around the Wen family's shop, the number of people secretly watching suddenly increased. After listening to Niu Yid's words, Yin Baikong, who was on the God of Wealth peak, lost interest in the treasure left behind by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, after hearing that Amano and the other three were following Yu Qianqiu, he felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Hence, he also ordered people to closely monitor Yu Qianqiu. In the Dirong Kingdom's shop, after Bing Qingzi heard about Hu Yuntian's actions in luring the two of them to the sleeping spring loft, his complexion became gloomy and gloomy. Without a doubt, even though he had sworn an oath, it had still aroused the suspicion of others. Since Hu Changshou had already become suspicious, the others certainly wouldn't be any better. It was just that most of them didn't have Hu Changshou's strength, so they didn't dare to openly probe. Being stabbed in the back by one's ally made one's mood very bad. However, Bing Qingzi slightly calmed down and put this matter aside for the time being. Similar things were common in the cultivation world, so it wasn't strange at all. Just like these few times, how could he and Hu Changshou not stab Yin Baikong in the back? The latter was also the two's ally, but when it came to interests, they would still take action. The most important thing was to have the ability to deter others, so that they wouldn't dare to act rashly. After the cornucopia meeting ends, immediately follow me back to the Ice Palace. This is not a place to stay for long. For the first time, Bing Qingzi's words to Yan Juexing carried an unquestionable tone. Yan Juexing was silent for a while before saying, Master, disciples' cultivation has stagnated, becoming a bottleneck in the cultivation of demonic arts. I can only rely on the blood demon flower to lay the 7-star blood formation, to absorb the power of the stars to break through quickly. It's said that the cornucopia meeting is a gathering of treasures, but why haven't I seen anyone selling the 7-star blood orchid until now? Bing Qingzi and Man, who could hear the unwillingness in his words. Sigh, this kind of thing can be encountered, but not all the time. Bing Qingzi sighed slightly and said, it turns out that the true cultivation meaning of the demonic book has always been sealed by the taboo. Those who don't cultivate the demonic book can't discover and break it. Otherwise, the demonic book will self-destruct. Even I didn't know about this. If I had known that the 7-star blood orchid was the blood demon flower, I would have started collecting it long ago, and I wouldn't be in such a passive situation. At least 7 blood orchids are needed to lay the formation. It's a bit difficult to collect them all at once. Man who bowed and said, Master, you can't be blamed for this. I think the demonic king who wrote the demonic book didn't want such a book to fall into the hands of his opponent, so he added the taboo to protect it. Then he said to Yan Juexing, Junior brother, this matter can't be rushed. Although the 7-star blood orchid is rare, it's not extinct. There will be a time when it appears, so we might as well wait patiently. Yan Juexing nodded slightly, but he said thoughtfully, Maybe there are many in the Chinese cultivation world. Oh, Bing Qingzi's eyes lit up. Are you sure? There are 4 major clans in the Chinese cultivation world. Among them, the Wu clan runs the largest auction house in China. I participated once and saw someone auctioning the blood orchid with my own eyes. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and said, later on, I heard that the Wu clan auctioned the 7-star blood orchid several times consecutively. This matter is a bit strange. Why is it that only the Wu clan auctioned the blood orchid one after another? Are you suspecting that the Wu clan has the blood orchid? Bing Qingzi asked. That's not necessarily true. Yan Zhuixing shook his head and said with firm eyes. But there's one thing I'm sure of. The Wu clan definitely knows who the seller and buyer are. It's a pity that it's not convenient to go deep into China's hinterland to make a move on the Wu clan. Otherwise, I'll definitely be able to find out something. Alright, there's no need to worry as long as there's a target. Bing Qingzi's eyes flickered and said, the East Holy Land is opening soon. Once Bai Changchun leaves, I can't care so much anymore. I'll make a trip to the Wu clan personally and find the blood orchid, so that your demonic technique can make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Master, man who wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. A group of spirit-severing stage experts were forced by Bai Changchun to make a deadly oath, so they couldn't go to the Chinese cultivation world easily. But thinking that Master had broken the restriction to save Yan Zhuixing last time, it was meaningless to say anything more. At this moment, a disciple ran over and reported the news of Yu Qianqiu to Cornucopia. After hearing the news, Bing Qingzi and Man whose faces turned gloomy. They had always remembered the death of their second brother on Yu Qianqiu's head. Yu Qianqiu, you finally appeared. It's been a long time since we last met in China. Yan Zhuixing sneered. He still had a long way to go in cultivating the demonic book, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Yu Qianqiu. In the backyard of the dormant spring building, the Enchantress of 100 Charms stood by the small lotus pond. Her body was wrapped in a red veil and looked very enchanting. After listening to Niu Yid's words, she didn't show her face in public anymore. She just hoped that Niu Yid's words were true and waited quietly for the arrival of Yu Qianqiu. Sister Yi, Yan Yu shouted happily as soon as she entered the courtyard. She quickly walked to the side of the Enchantress of 100 Charms and said, good news, do you want to hear it? The Enchantress of 100 Charms had a trace of doubt between her eyebrows. After thinking for a while, she was shocked and thought of something. For the current her, what else could be good news? She couldn't help but ask excitedly, You mean he's here? Yan Yu smiled and said, when I first heard the news, I was worried that you would be happy for nothing. So I sent someone to inquire and confirm it. Not long ago, the person I sent saw Yu Qianqiu using the Starflame fire technique on the street with his own eyes. It's really the Yu Qianqiu you've been waiting for. Really? Where is he now? The Enchantress of 100 Charms asked impatiently. Her face was full of excitement that was hard to suppress. She was a dignified palace mistress. She had sneaked into this place from the cultivation world of China. Not to mention that she was unfamiliar with the people and the place. She also had to be on guard everywhere. It could be said that she had suffered a lot, and the hardships were indescribable. With great difficulty, she had finally found him. How could she not be excited? Yan Yu looked at her reaction and chuckled. From her reaction, it could be seen that she wasn't looking for Yu Qianqiu just to solve some trouble, as she had said. She was afraid that there was something ambiguous going on. To be honest, Yan Yu was now somewhat curious. What kind of person was Yu Qianqiu to be able to make this woman, who always laughed at everything, care so much about him? I heard that he entered the Wen clan's shop and hasn't come out yet. Just as Yan Yu finished speaking, she saw that the Enchantress of 100 Charms was about to soar into the sky. She hurriedly pulled her back and shook her head, saying, Since he's already here, why are you in such a hurry? The cornucopia doesn't allow cultivators below the soul formation stage to fly as they please. Otherwise, they will be killed. Don't be too happy until sorrow comes. The Enchantress of 100 Charms paused. She could hear the teasing tone in Yan Yu's words. She then angrily pinched Yan Yu's voluptuous chest and said, You're making fun of me. However, She still gave up on the thought of flying over, and quickly left the lotus pond. Yin Yu flashed and caught up to her. She pulled her back and said, I want to see what kind of man this Yu Qianqiu is to be able to make big sister fall head over heels for him. You're still talking? The enchantress of 100 charms shouted, and the other giggled. The two of them chattered as they left. It was always easier for women who were in the same boat to become friends. Two beautiful women, one more seductive than the other, appeared on the street at the same time. They immediately attracted everyone's attention, and the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. The two women ignored them and went straight to the Wen clan's shop. When the shopkeeper of the shop saw the two of them, he was stunned for a moment. He immediately greeted them with cupped hands and a smile. So it's owner Yan, and the top courtesan of Spring Slumber Brothel. Your presence really brings light to my humble shop. May I ask what you two would like to buy from my humble shop? Shopkeeper Wen is too polite. Yin Yu smiled. They were doing business on the same street, so they knew each other. He then asked, I heard that Yu Qianqiu is in your shop. Is that true? Shopkeeper Wen pondered for a moment. He thought that everyone had seen this, and there was nothing to hide. He then nodded and said, That's right, he is here. Could it be that you two are here to look for him? Chapter 629. Temptress replied, I'm an old friend of Yu Qianqiu. I heard that he came to Cornucopia, so I came to see him. Please inform him that Yi Kun is looking for him. He naturally knows who I am. If it weren't for Wen Lanfeng, she would have gone in to find him. Shopkeeper Wen's face was solemn. Yu Qianqiu had a close relationship with the Wen family's ancestor. He really didn't see that this seductive sleeping spring house top courtesan was actually a friend of Yu Qianqiu. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relationship between the two? He didn't dare to neglect and immediately cupped his hands and said, Please wait a moment, I'll go and inform Mr. Yu. Thank you. Temptress respectfully sent him off. Upstairs, Yu Qianqiu was swinging his arm to fool Wen Lanfeng, causing Lu Yanqing to frown incessantly. Wen Lanfeng seemed to be possessed, and even admired him to the extreme. In his heart, he was full of envy that Bai Changchun had accepted a good disciple. The shopkeeper ran up and saluted them first, and then said to Yu Qianqiu, Mr. Yu, there is a woman named Yi Kun looking for you downstairs. She said that she is your old friend. Do you want to see her? Yu Qianqiu was helpless. This was expected. He knew it would be like this. He sighed and said, Bring her to the backyard first. I'll go down later. After that he sat on the side in a daze. The shopkeeper took the order and went down. When Lu Yanqing heard Yi Kun, she immediately remembered the charming woman who sang in Sleeping Spring House. Wasn't she called Yi Kun? When Lanfeng saw him in a daze and couldn't help but ask, Who is Yi Kun? It seems that you don't want to see her. It's a long story. Yu Qianqiu sighed. He felt a headache whenever he saw the 100 Charms enchantress. This unclear relationship really made him feel conflicted. The temptress and Yin Yu were led to the backyard. The shopkeeper informed them that Yu Qianqiu was talking to Wen Lanfeng and would come down shortly. He asked them to wait for a moment. After saying that, the shopkeeper did not disturb them and went to busy himself. Yin Yu saw Amano and the other three sitting in the courtyard, so she went over to greet Li Qiuxiang. The temptress looked around and sighed. Back then, she was a dignified palace master, and Yu Qianqiu was just a small disciple who worked as a laborer in Angquangsung, and he was almost killed by her. Now things were really different from before. His name was known to everyone in the cultivation world, and he was even more famous than himself. Moreover, the people who came and went were all top figures in the cultivation world of China. It was really hard to understand. He had been jumping around outside and causing trouble everywhere. It was a miracle that he had survived until now. But unexpectedly, he climbed higher and higher, climbing to a height that many people could not reach. At this moment, three figures landed in the backyard at the same time. It was Nongzhu who brought Zi and hibiscus. As soon as Nongzhu arrived, people in the yard came over and saluted, Senior Nongzhu. Nongzhu waved her hand casually, indicating that there was no need to be so polite. But when she saw Yin Yu, her expression was not friendly. Yenyu lowered her head secretly and cursed in her heart. She did not know when she had offended this senior, who always gave her a bad look. Ze accidentally glanced at the temptress and was stunned for a moment. Then she cheered. Ah, Sister Yi, why are you here? Z. The temptress's eyes also lit up, and the two of them held hands excitedly. Especially Ze, she did not have many friends, and suddenly met one. She was really happy. When Yu Qianqiu, who was upstairs, heard the words purple dress, he was startled. He immediately tiptoed to the window, and like a thief, he stuck his head out and looked down. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but when he did, his face turned green. Let alone purple dress, even that girl was fine. In addition to the temptress, there was also Yenyu. What the hell? Farong was also here. What was Nongzhu doing? Why did she bring her here? When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and found that they could not understand this guy, they looked at his strange behavior. Nongzhu saw that her daughter was so happy, so he forgot about Yenyu and asked with a smile. Ze, who is this? She made you so happy. Master, this is Sister Yi Kun. She was my best friend when I was in the cultivation world of Huaxia. She helped me a lot. Ze said excitedly. Oh. Nongzhu suddenly smiled and nodded to the temptress. In that case, I have to thank you. My disciple doesn't know what to do. Thank you for taking care of him. He wasn't just saying this casually. Since he had helped Ze before, he would remember this favor. Senior, you are welcome. I did not do anything. The temptress said respectfully. Well, Miss Yi, if you need me in the future, you can come to the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea to find me. Maybe I can help you a little. Nongzhu smiled. This could be considered as giving a promise. The temptress was overjoyed and immediately bowed. Thank you, Senior. Thank you. She had heard of Mr. Nongzhu's name. She did not expect to accidentally make friends with the middle-stage divine transformation realm master, which made her overjoyed. Nongzhu suddenly said, Ha! He stared at the almost transparent clothes of the temptress and asked suspiciously, You have practiced the jade charm skill? Who is Qiu Meinyang from the cultivation world of Huaxia to you? The temptress was stunned and immediately replied, Senior, I have indeed practiced the jade charm skill. Senior Qiu was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace, more than 1,000 years ago. I found the jade charm skill by accident when I was sorting out the relics of the past. It was left by Senior Qiu. Are you old friends with the ancestors of the Caprice Palace? Time really flies. It has been more than 1,000 years. At that time, my cultivation was only at the middle stage of the crossing calamity stage. Nongzhu sighed with emotion. The charming woman called Qiu Meinyang appeared in her mind. Her cultivation was one level higher than his at that time. They met by chance and did not know each other's background. They did not want to inquire about each other's background. They just fooled around for a period of time because they were attracted to each other. That feeling was really ecstatic. After hanging out with each other for a period of time, they each had their own matters to attend to, and after that they never saw each other again. Ah. Nongzhu suddenly froze and asked weakly, What did you just say? You said that Qiu Meinyang is the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace? Yes. Senior, don't you know? The temptress asked. Qiu Meinyang, good name. Yu Qianqiu, who was upstairs, revealed a cheeky grin and asked Wen Lanfeng, who had also walked to the window to watch, Senior Wen, have you heard about the romantic history of this Qiu Meinyang and Senior Nongzhu? Wen Lanfeng replied disapprovingly, I have never heard of Qiu Meinyang. Nongzhu's romantic history is well known in the cultivation world. Who knows how many women he has hooked up with? With his cultivation talent, if he spent half of his time on women on cultivation, I am afraid he would have been ranked among the top 10 experts. You are the same, spending all your time on Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu secretly smiled, but when he saw the women below, he suddenly stopped smiling. It seemed that he was the same. Haha, maybe it has been too long and I have forgotten. Nongzhu laughed. He was sweating in his heart. The woman he hooked up with was the wife of the leader of the Caprice Palace? At that time, although his cultivation talent was good, he was just a rogue cultivator in the middle stage of crossing calamity. At that time, the Caprice Palace was already a big force, but he dared to make a cuckold of the leader of the Caprice Palace. If he was found out, he would die without a whole body. That was dangerous, too dangerous. Nongju rejoiced and asked subconsciously, "How is she now?" After asking, he immediately realized that he had asked the wrong question. Since Chiu Manyang said that it was a relic, she was naturally dead. Moreover, if Chiu Manyang was still alive now, her cultivation must have reached the deification stage. If her cultivation had reached the deification stage, there was no reason that he did not know. Although his question was nonsense, the temptress still answered honestly. Senior Chiu passed away 1,000 years ago. This sentence made Nongju sigh. Looking back on the past, she could not count how many women she had slept with, but those who were still alive could be counted on one hand. Chiu Manyang, have a safe journey. Nongju sighed to the sky. The fate of life was so magical. Chiu Manyang's cultivation was higher than his, and now he did not know how many times she had reincarnated. But he was still alive after 1,000 years. Maybe this was the meaning of cultivation. To live. The temptress also suspected the relationship between him and Chiu Manyang. But Chiu Manyang was the ancestor of the sect after all. She did not dare to think deeply about it. But she was more or less glad. She did not expect that the ancestor of the sect had a relationship with the famous Mr. Nongju. If the sect encountered any trouble, it would be easier for her to ask for help. This was also the benefit of the ancestor. Furong, come here. Ziyi waved to Furong and called her over. She pointed to the temptress and said, "This is Sister Yi, whom I often mention to you. She is also very familiar with Yu Qianqiu. You can also call her Sister Yi." Sister Yi, Furong said obediently. Ziyi pointed at her and introduced her to the temptress. "This is Furong, Yu Qianqiu's woman." Yu Qianqiu, who was upstairs, stared at the lively Ziyi and rolled his eyes. "Yu Qianqiu's woman?" The temptress was startled, then smiled and said, "Hello, Sister Furong." Yi looked around. She looked at the temptress, and then at Furong. She kept thinking about which woman looked more like Yu Qianqiu's woman. She did not know that she was also one of them. If she knew, how would she feel? "Sister Yi, aren't you in the Chinese cultivation world? Why are you here?" Ziyi asked curiously. The temptress pointed to the building and said with a smile, "I happened to come to the cornucopia. I heard that Yu Qianqiu is here, so I came to see." "He is here?" Ziyi and Furong asked almost at the same time. The temptress was surprised and said, "You don't know?" Ziyi and Furong looked at Nongju at the same time. The former asked suspiciously, "Master, is Yu Qianqiu really here?" Her tone was a little sad. Nongju coughed guiltily and said, "How would I know?" Ever since he knew that Yu Qianqiu was in the Sleeping Spring building, he was already furious. He did not want the two girls to meet Yu Qianqiu. Why would he tell them that Yu Qianqiu was here? If he was not worried that something might happen, he would not have brought the two girls here. Chapter 630. When Lanfeng, who was upstairs, was confused, Nongju knew that Yu Qianqiu was here. Why did she say she didn't know? She tilted her head and looked at Yu Qianqiu for help. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Since she knew he was here, there was no point in delaying. So he left through the window. Ziyi didn't get a satisfactory answer. She didn't want to interrogate her master in front of so many people, so she said to Furong, "Let's go up and look for him." "No need." Yu Qianqiu walked down the stairs with a smile. Ziyi shouted excitedly, "Big liar!" As a result, Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. How could she call him a big liar in front of so many people? How could he put his face? Fortunately, Furong was gentle and lovely. She ran to hold his arm, and immediately restored a smile on his face. He held Furong's shoulders and took a good look. He smiled faintly and said, "Are you all right over there?" Furong nodded with a bright face and said, "Good. That's good. I'll talk to you later." Yu Qianqiu held her hand and let go. Furong nodded and stood aside obediently. It was this gentle and harmonious scene that made many people envious. Lu Yanqing didn't know when she had also walked to the window and was silently watching below. When Lanfeng tilted his head and looked, Yu Qianqiu looked at the temptress of 100 charms. When he was about to walk over, Ziyi stopped him and asked excitedly, "Big liar, when did you come?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and asked word by word. Who's the big liar? Please pay attention to the way you address me. If it weren't for Nongzhu's covetous eyes, he would have turned hostile on the spot. Ziyi didn't care and wasn't angry. She smiled and asked, Yu Qianqiu, how much money did you cheat while I was away? Remember to treat me later. Nongzhu looked at her daughter and was speechless. She was indeed a little rude. Yu Qianqiu wished that he could seal her mouth. Every time they met, she would not say anything nice. Taking a deep breath, he squeezed out a smile and said, You're getting married soon. I forgot to congratulate you. Have you received the congratulatory gift that I asked your master to bring for you? Mary. Ziyi opened her mouth wide and was stunned. Nongzhu wished she could cover Yu Qianqiu's mouth with her own. Ziyi was going to get married? Why hadn't Nongzhu mentioned it before? When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other, then they disappeared from the window and suddenly appeared in the courtyard, causing a group of people to salute them. Nongzhu, what do you mean? When Lanfeng asked somewhat unhappily, Ziyi's marriage is such a big matter. Why have I never heard you mention it? Could it be that you look down on me? When Lanfeng? Lu Yanqing also said unhappily. Nongzhu, we watched Ziyi grow up. Don't tell me we don't even have the qualifications to drink a cup of wedding wine. Who said I'm getting married? Why didn't I know? Ziyi said blankly. Nongzhu could not explain, so she simply put the blame on Yu Qianqiu and said, Don't listen to this boy's nonsense. He doesn't speak the truth. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu again. They were very suspicious, as if they were doubting his honesty. Yu Qianqiu's personality was that of someone who would twist words and force logic, even if he didn't suffer a loss. How could he stand being wronged like this? F*ck, he cursed on the spot. Who's talking nonsense? You were clearly the one who told me that. Oh, Yu Qianqiu suddenly revealed an expression of sudden realization. I understand now. You must have come up with a reason for Ziyi's marriage in order to swindle my treasured sword. I was wondering why I didn't hear anything before. Then he pointed to Nongzhu and said to Ziyi, Ziyi, look carefully. Your master is the real liar. Shut up. Nongzhu was embarrassed into anger and said, Who cheated you of your sword? You're ruthless. I can't explain it to you. Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand and said coldly, Give me back my sword. Don't tell me you didn't take it. Who took your sword? Nongzhu shouted angrily. The two of them quarreled directly, and both of them argued. The people present did not know who was telling the truth and who was lying. Those who did not know that Yu Qianqiu's master was Bai Changchun admired Yu Qianqiu's courage. He dared to contradict Nongzhu, who was in the spirit-severing stage. Boy, if you keep talking, believe it or not, I will kill you. Nongzhu directly began to threaten. Kill me? I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Yu Qianqiu rolled up his sleeves directly, as if he was going to fight. When Lanfeng could not stand it anymore and immediately shouted, Shut up all of you. Stop arguing. Yu Qianqiu, is this the sword you were talking about? Ziyi held an ancient sword in her hand and shook it. When Lanfeng glanced at it casually, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Lu Yanqing's eyes were also looking at the sword through the green gauze. Yes, it's this one. Give it back to me. Yu Qianqiu reached out to grab it. Ziyi pouted, and threw it directly back into her storage bag. Then a black light flashed in her hand, and a purple-black bamboo stick appeared. She shouted, Hit! Without warning, she directly hit Yu Qianqiu's head. When she raised the bamboo rod, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have a telepathic connection, and guessed where she was going to strike. With a whoosh he dodged to the side and roared, You're crazy! Ziyi's stick missed Yu Qianqiu's body, and she was slightly stunned. Her cultivation was not a little higher than Yu Qianqiu's. In addition, it was a close-range sneak attack. It was reasonable to say that it was difficult for him to dodge with his speed. Unexpectedly, he seemed to be able to predict it, and actually dodged in advance, anticipating the enemy's first move. When Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing, and Nongzhu looked at each other, and were somewhat surprised. They all saw that Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed, but in advance as if he had predicted it. It should be known that in a battle, being able to predict the enemy's first move was a great advantage. It was often a matter of life and death. This was a kind of sharp intuition given by God, or precious experience accumulated after a long period of fighting. Not everyone could have this kind of intuition. And some people, even if they fought for a lifetime, could not understand a thing or two in this aspect. To be exact, people who had this kind of magical intuition could be described as people who were blessed by God. Even if the three of them had reached the soul formation stage, it was difficult to use this intuition in a fight. Maybe they could occasionally see it, but they would doubt it and dare not follow their intuition unless they had to. After all, if they made a wrong step in a fight, the consequences would be unimaginable. Maybe it was a coincidence. The three of them secretly said in their hearts, "Fight!" Ziyi's attack missed, and she was not satisfied. She flashed and rushed to hit again with the stick. Although she did not see anything on the surface, she was stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words. When her master gave her the sword, he said that it was a gift from Yu Qianqiu, which made her very happy. Who knew that when she met Yu Qianqiu, he wanted to take back the sword? She was very unhappy to take back the thing that was given to her, so she had to hit Yu Qianqiu to vent her anger. F***ck. Before Ziyi could move, Yu Qianqiu let out a ghastly cry, and once again dodged to the side in advance. Ziyi immediately pounced on empty air. He dodged in advance again, when Lanfeng and the other two looked at each other in surprise. Ziyi missed. Before her feet touched the ground, she dodged to the side and chased after Yu Qianqiu. She was hurt by this big liar. How could she be satisfied if she did not hit him with the stick? However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He suddenly twisted his body and moved to the side. Ziyi's bamboo stick brushed past his back and missed. Even Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know why he suddenly did this. In any case, his body followed his heart's desire, and his body followed a flash of thought. When he really heard the sound of dodging, he rejoiced. This girl was stubborn and did not know how to control her strength. If she really hit him, it would be embarrassing. At first, Furong thought that the two of them were joking. However, when she saw Ziyi continuously chasing after Yu Qianqiu, it did not seem like a joke. Furong immediately asked anxiously, "Ziyi, why are you hitting him?" Hit. A purplish-black light left Ziyi's hand and shot towards Yu Qianqiu with a whistling sound. The more Ziyi could not hit him, the angrier she became. She actually used her sword to control the bamboo stick to chase after him. She was fast, but Yu Qianqiu's reaction was not slow. He did not even turn his head and bent down. A gust of wind swept over his head. However, before he could raise his head, he subconsciously dodged to the side, and the bamboo stick that shot back was dodged again. A purplish-black shadow shuttled around the courtyard, forcing Yu Qianqiu to jump up and down, dodge left and right, and jump back and forth. He did not even have the chance to speak. However, the shadow could not touch him. The purplish-black shadow always brushed past him. When Lanfeng and the other two were dumbfounded, they did not feel that Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed at all. Instead, it was as if they had seen something incredible. Yu Qianqiu did not dodge with speed. He dodged in advance, every time based on his intuition. Even if the bamboo stick suddenly changed direction, he could still react in advance. It was incredible that he could use intuition to this extent. Unfortunately, when Bai Changchun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, Nongzhu was not there. If he was there and heard Bai Changchun's words, he would not be so surprised. When Bai Changchun taught Yu Qianqiu the animal play, he said that this incantation was not very powerful. The secret of mastering it was reflected in the 4 words foresight. Once one was proficient in it, it would benefit him for the rest of his life. Ziyi busied herself for a long time, and her face was filled with astonishment. She suddenly put away her bamboo stick and stared at Yu Qianqiu, as if remembering something. When Bai Changchun had said those words, she had been there, and now she remembered. "You're so stubborn. Is there something wrong with your brain?" Yu Qianqiu finally had time to speak. He rolled up his sleeves and said fiercely, "I am the strongest master below the deification stage, and I am not weak. You forced me to do this, so don't blame me for being rude." His face was ferocious like a hungry wolf about to eat a lamb. He was ready to fight back. "Have you mastered the animal play?" Ziyi pointed at him and asked in a daze, "Why do you care what I have mastered? Animal play." Yu Qianqiu shouted halfway, and then stopped. His face froze. And he suddenly recalled the scene just now. It seemed that he had been dodging based on intuition. Chapter 631. Recalling the process of dodging earlier. He recalled what Bai Changchun had said when he taught him the animal moves. When he saw the animal world in the Jade Archive, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After listening to Bai Changchun's words, he decided to give it a try. Although he was just giving it a try, he still put in a lot of effort, because he had full trust in Bai Changchun. Whenever he was free, he would put his heart and soul into it. He couldn't say that he was very proficient, but he was pretty much done. To be honest, after practicing for so long, he really didn't find any benefits. However, he found that the more he practiced, the more his movements resembled those of the animals in the mountains. He didn't dare to show it in front of others as it was too embarrassing. However, some things were always like this. The effort he put in would not go to waste. Yu Qianqiu stood there and smiled foolishly. He was pleasantly surprised. Animal moves? Nongju's eyes lit up. She raised an eyebrow and rubbed her chin. Her expression was unpredictable. When Lanfeng took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu, then asked Nongju, "Was it he who taught you the magic incantation?" When she said the word he, she slightly paused. Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed as she stared at Nongju. Nongju nodded with a sinister smile. "Yu Qianqiu, am I right?" Zi asked expectantly. She was also practicing the animal play, but her movements were still bumpy. She couldn't even be said to be smooth. One could imagine how depressed she was. Little did she know that she had grown up in the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea, and rarely left the island. She had never seen many of the animals in the animal moves, and she didn't even have any impression of some of the common poultry. How could she master it just by relying on the pictures in the Jade Archive? Naturally, the effort was not worth the reward. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned his head and snorted. "I don't know." The pleading expression on Ziyi's face froze. She said angrily, "Let me try again." Her figure flashed, and a series of shadows appeared in the courtyard. It was a dazzling sight. All of them rushed towards Yu Qianqiu, making it hard to tell which was real and which was fake. F***ck, you're still coming. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry, and began to jump around again. Furong, who was at the side, said anxiously, "Zi, don't hit him anymore." However, he didn't listen to her advice at all. Amano and the others looked at each other. Knowing that they were all acquaintances and wouldn't kill anyone, they didn't bother. Form displacement transposition. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and smiled. This was Nongju's signature incantation. The allured demonic lady looked at Ziyi's familiar movement technique with suspicion. She wondered why it was so similar to the Great Illusion technique. However, there was still a difference between the two. As soon as Ziyi used the shape displacement transposition, Nongju subconsciously looked at the Enchantress of 100 Charms. In fact, this technique was created by him, after he saw Qiu Meinyang use the Phantom Great technique in the past. However, with his extraordinary talent, his self-created Transfiguration transposition was even sharper than Phantom Shadow. The biggest use of Phantom Shadow was to confuse people's eyes and ears. The shape displacement transposition created by Nongju could not only confuse people's eyes and ears, but it was also good at speed. It was also supported by attack. The fast and elusive way of attack was hard to guard against. It was quite powerful. The higher one's cultivation, the more effective it was. However, what surprised Wen Lanfeng and the others was that Yu Qianqiu, who had been a little flustered in the beginning, now seemed a little elegant when he moved and dodged, giving off a transcendent feeling of walking on water. They were immediately shocked when they observed carefully. They saw that Yu Qianqiu actually closed his eyes with a faint smile on his face. No matter how many phantoms she created, he was free to move freely. The muscles on Nongju's face twitched. It was the first time in his life that someone could deal with his shape displacement transposition with his eyes closed. In fact, Yu Qianqiu had no choice. The phantoms that Zi created all over the courtyard always conflicted with his vision and intuition. He clearly felt that the opponent was attacking him from behind, but he also saw someone was attacking in front of him. The feeling of being in a dilemma was too painful. And he was almost in danger again and again. Should he see it with his own eyes, or follow his intuition? After a period of embarrassment, he firmly believed in the animal tricks taught by Changchun. In order not to let his vision interfere with his judgment, he simply closed his eyes. In an instant, the whole world was far away from him. The function of shape displacement transposition to confuse people's eyes and ears had no effect on him. He abandoned vision and hearing, and only followed his intuition. In an instant he entered a very strange state. He felt like an eagle soaring in the wind. After spotting his prey, he could immediately judge the prey's escape route. With a preemptive dive, he could accurately make the prey fall into his claws. He felt like a fish in the water. No matter how fast the hunter's attack was, as long as there was a little fluctuation in the water, he could quickly catch it, quickly avoid the attack and escape. The more confident he was, the calmer he was. His movements were more elegant and free, like a rabbit rising and a cuckoo falling naturally. It had to be said that the cultivation of the tribulation stage provided him with a lot of convenience, giving him many abilities that ordinary people could not avoid. The more Ziyi fought, the more impatient she became. She increased her speed to the extreme, but she always felt that she was just a little bit away from her opponent. She was on the verge of breaking down. In the eyes of the audience, it seemed that Ziyi deliberately let Yu Qianqiu go. She always attacked after Yu Qianqiu dodged, and she always missed by a little bit. The two of them seemed to be playing around. In fact, this was already the limit of Yu Qianqiu's dodging. If he encountered an expert in the soul formation stage, with the attack speed of the soul formation stage, it would be difficult for him to dodge the opponent's attack, even if he could predict the opponent's attack first. After all, the difference in cultivation was too great. In terms of speed, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. It was difficult to make up for this with techniques. However, for those below the soul formation stage, Ziyi at the end of the tribulation stage was an example, when Lanfeng and the other two were shocked. This guy actually dodged using his intuition from the beginning to the end. This was too exaggerated. Maybe it was nothing now, but when his cultivation reached the soul formation stage, it would be incredible. It should be known that most of the time, soul formation stage cultivators fought with their strength. The probability of them fighting in close combat was very high. Once they fought face to face, they could predict the opponent's attack first and support it with attacks. It was a very scary thing. Dodging is so boring. I'm not fighting anymore, Ziyi shouted impatiently. The shadow surrounding everyone gradually disappeared. Ziyi looked angrily at Yu Qianqiu, who also stopped. Why are you not fighting anymore? Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and waved excitedly. Come, let's play for a while more. He was addicted to playing. This feeling was too wonderful. It was a little uncomfortable to stop playing when he was having fun. Ziyi stared at him and blinked her big eyes. She put away the rod in her hand and ran over with a smile. How do you practice? Teach me again. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, his face immediately darkened. He lost all interest. When he was on Obedient Island, it was not like he did not teach her. It was torture. She was asked to imitate the form of a chicken. She looked at the picture in the Jade Archive, spread her arms and flew like a bird. Yu Qianqiu was so shocked that he took a few steps back. He was speechless. In the end, he asked her to change to something else. In the end, Yu Qianqiu wanted to slap himself. It was his fault for asking for it. This woman was an idiot in some aspects. He was fooled by an idiot. What else could he do but ask for a slap? Hence, he cursed angrily and quickly ran away. If I teach you again, I'll change my surname to Cho. Damn it. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Nongzhu, who was staring at him. He coughed and said, I don't have time now. We'll talk about it later. He stretched out his hand and said, Give me back my sword. Since you gave it to me, it's mine. I'm not giving it back. Ziyi rejected him decisively. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth, but decided not to say anything. It was his bad luck to run into this father and daughter pair. He couldn't get his sword back. He turned around and walked towards the temptress. He asked with a smile, Why are you here? I'm here to broaden my horizons. I heard that you were here, so I came to look for you. With so many people around, the temptress couldn't say much. She could only say it this way. She giggled and said, "I'm not familiar with this place. I'll follow you from now on." Yu Qianqiu smiled knowingly. The two of them started asking each other some irrelevant questions. Yin Yu, who was beside the temptress, looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was looking straight ahead. Suddenly her nose twitched. She smelled an unforgettable body odor. His eyes abruptly widened as he sized up Yu Qianqiu's body. Then, he looked at Tianye's group of four. His complexion turned deathly pale as he stared at Yu Qianqiu. Others might not be able to tell. But how could she not recognize the body odor of the first man she had a skin-to-skin contact with? It was exactly the same as Yu Qianqiu in front of her. This ability to distinguish had nothing to do with one's cultivation. No matter how high one's cultivation was, one might not be able to tell. As long as she really cared about him, it would be hard for her to mistake him. This was a gift given to women. Perhaps she would forget it after a long time. However, she hadn't been separated from him for long. She hugged the pillow in the room and sniffed it. There was still his body odor. In addition, the two of them were similar. Tianyi and the other three people who followed Niu Yid were also present. Moreover, she knew that Niu Yid had changed his appearance. The Niu Yid she saw was not his original face. With so many coincidences, it was hard for her to mistake him. She guessed who Yu Qianqiu was in an instant. However, Yu Qianqiu did not even look at her. That kind of indifference at such a close distance made her feel like her heart was being torn apart. The temptress inadvertently noticed Yin Yu's reaction. She saw her body tremble slightly and her face pale as she stared at Yu Qianqiu. She could not help but be stunned. "Yin Yu, what's wrong?" Yu Qianqiu looked at her. His expression froze. He thought to himself, "Oh no." Yin Yu looked miserable, but she forced a smile and shook her head. "It's nothing. I remembered that I have something to do in the building. I'll go back first." She bowed to Wen Lanfeng and the others. Then she quickly left. Everyone present could see that something was wrong. Nongzhu, who knew that Niu Yid was Yu Qianqiu, snorted coldly at Yu Qianqiu. After Lu Yanqing watched Yin Yu leave, she also turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. She sighed slightly behind the green veil. Chapter 632. The atmosphere suddenly became a little heavy. Although Wen Lanfeng did not know what happened, she knew that no one wanted to say anything. So she called the manager of the shop and arranged the rooms for everyone. Hibiscus naturally lived with Yu Qianqiu. After all, their identities had been made public, so there was nothing to hide. After returning to the room, Yu Qianqiu still looked a little strange. Hibiscus grabbed his arm and asked weakly, "What's wrong with you? Are you unhappy that I came here without telling you? Then I'll ask Senior Nongzhu to take me back." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He turned to look at her and suddenly smiled. He said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not unhappy. I'm just thinking that the cornucopia is very lively. If I take Hibiscus out for a walk, I don't know if Hibiscus will be happy." "I'll be happy." Hibiscus suddenly became energetic. She held Yu Qianqiu's arm and complained, "When Zi and I came here, Senior Nongzhu told us not to run around. We saw that it was very lively down there from the God of Wealth Peak. I've wanted to see it for a long time. Will you take me there now?" Although she spoke in a questioning tone, her face was filled with hope. Yu Qianqiu did not have the heart to refuse her. He immediately took her hand and said with a smile, "Let's go. I'll take you there right now." Furong's face was full of joy as she followed him out. Just as the two of them walked into the courtyard, they heard someone shouting from upstairs, "Where are you going?" The two of them raised their heads and saw Ziyi poking her head out of the window. Hibiscus smiled brightly and said, "Let's go outside and have a look." "Ah!" Ziyi let out a scream and jumped down from the window without saying anything. She grabbed Hibiscus's arm and complained, "Hibiscus, why didn't you call me when you went out to play?" Then she turned to stare at Yu Qianqiu and said, "I'll go too." Yu Qianqiu just wanted to refuse and ask her to go back, but he saw Hibiscus's eyes showed that she was expecting him to agree. Yu Qianqiu immediately lost his temper and did not say anything to show that he agreed. Ziyi cheered, then pulled Hibiscus along and walked out. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt his scalp tingle. A woman shopping alone was not something an ordinary man could handle. Two women shopping together, It was impossible not to be mentally prepared. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath, patted his chest, and followed behind them. Nongzhu looked down from the window upstairs and shook her head speechlessly. Beside her, Wen Lanfeng asked thoughtfully, "Nongzhu, what's going on with the marriage in purple?" He would never admit to this even if he was beaten to death. Nongzhu shook her head and said, "That boy is talking nonsense. There's no such thing." As soon as Yu Qianqiu came out of the Wen family's merchant shop, he immediately attracted many people's attention. Yu Qianqiu calmly asked Mo Xiaojun to go out with him. As soon as they reached the yard, a head poked out of the window on the top floor and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, come up for a moment." It was Nongzhu. Yu Qianqiu asked Mo Xiaojun to wait for a moment, and directly jumped in through the window. Seeing that Wen Lanfeng and the other two were there, he asked Nongzhu after saluting, "What's the matter?" Nongzhu put her hands behind her back and said expressionlessly, "You and Niu Yud are old acquaintances. Help me contact him. I have something to ask him." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He did not know what Nongzhu was doing. He asked suspiciously, "Why are you looking for him?" Nongzhu pointed to Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said, "Well, they also want a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. They are all old friends. I must help them." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Since they are old friends, don't hurt them. But now is not the time to tell them the secret of limit-breaking pills. He pondered for a moment and said, "This is not a big problem. After a period of time, I will personally send it to you two seniors. I still have something to do now." Wen Lanfeng smiled and waved his hand. "Since it is not a big problem, it doesn't matter if it is a little late. If you have something to do, go ahead." Lu Yanqing did not say anything, and stood quietly on the side. Unexpectedly, Nongzhu snorted coldly and said, "Come on, what can you do? It is nothing more than stealing chickens and dogs. Solve this matter first." "I am stealing chickens and dogs?" When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he became furious. He raised his neck and roared, "Your disciple Zi spent more than 800 million high-grade spirit stones in half a day. I'm busy trying to earn back the money I spent. Don't you think I'm busy? If you give me 800 million upper-level spiritual stones now, I will immediately solve the matter you mentioned." 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. The room immediately quieted down. They were all shocked by such a large number. Nongzhu then asked weakly, "Z spent so much money in half a day? Is it possible?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "I also hope it is impossible, but your disciple can't wait to put the whole cornucopia into her storage bag. 800 million is too little. If you don't believe me, you can go and have a look now. I will leave first." Then he directly ran out of the window. The three people looked at each other. After a long time, Nongzhu turned around and said, "I will go down to see what Z has done. She can spend 800 million. When Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing looked at each other and followed, they also wanted to see it. When the three people came to Z's room, they saw all kinds of things in the room. Z and Hibiscus were chattering and laughing in the pile of things, like two thieves dividing the spoils. Seeing the three people coming, the two women casually threw away the things in their hands and saluted. The three people were completely speechless when they saw the messy things in the room. There was a big clean and transparent bottle at Nongzhu's feet. She picked it up and looked at it. With the experience of the three people, they knew what the bottle was at a glance. It was something used to pretend to be a dead body and extract the corpse poison. It was used by the more obscure alchemists to refine pills. Nongzhu held the bottle and asked Z, "You bought this?" Z nodded. Nongzhu asked again, "Why did you buy this?" Z said bluntly, "It looks good." Nongzhu coughed and asked, "How much did you spend this time?" Z thought for a moment and looked at Hibiscus. "The money we spent together should be less than 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones." 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones? Nongzhu was shocked. She looked at the things in the room and said in disbelief, "These things are worth 2 billion upper-level spiritual stones." Also, Z moved away and pointed at the dozens of storage bags on the table behind her. "The room is a little small. There are not enough things in one storage bag. I haven't taken out the other things." Nongzhu and the other two people were speechless, when they looked at the dozens of bulging storage bags. Now they really believed that they had spent so much money. Z looked at the three people who were silent and asked curiously, "Master, what do you want from me?" "Nothing, you can continue." Nongju waved her hand and glanced at the various things in the room. She turned around and left with cold sweat on her forehead. When the three people left, the two women continued to talk about the spoils of war. When the three people returned to the top floor, Lu Yen, who had been silent, sighed and said, "It seems that Yu Qianqiu said that Z spent 800 million upper-level spiritual stones. He didn't count hibiscus in it. 800 million upper-level spiritual stones spent in half a day. Oh my god. She went shopping and spent 100 years of our Wen family savings." When Lanfeng patted Nongju's shoulder and said, "If Z wants to find someone, she must find a very rich family. Our Wen family's financial resources are definitely not enough. I think only Yin Baikong's financial resources are worthy of her. But I think Yin Baikong will also retreat when he sees her. Don't make sarcastic remarks here. Z only did it once in a while." Nongju rolled her eyes and snorted. "That kid is rich. Spending some of his money is giving him face." When Lanfeng laughed and said, "But I see that Yu Qianqiu's face is dark. It seems that he is very unwilling to give face." Chapter 633. There was a restaurant diagonally opposite the Wen family's shop. Man Hu and Yan Juexing sat opposite each other, at a table near the window on the second floor. They seemed to have no interest in the dishes on the table. Yan Juexing's eyes were always paying attention to the entrance of the Wen family's shop, while Man Hu was paying attention to Yan Juexing's expression. Ever since Yan Juexing knew that Yu Qianqiu had brought the two women to cornucopia to buy things wantonly, Yan Juexing ran out regardless of his advice, and followed Yu Qianqiu around cornucopia for a long time. After following Yu Qianqiu into the Wen family's shop, the two came to this restaurant. There are a lot of people who have bad intentions towards you. It's not rational for you to run out like this. Man Hu transmitted his voice. The two sat here, and had been communicating by voice transmission. The occasional glances from the surroundings were very suspicious. Yan Juexing narrowed his eyes and said, "There are also a lot of people who have bad intentions towards Yu Qianqiu. He is also running around everywhere. If he is not afraid, why should I be afraid? It's not the same. Wen Lanfeng is more deterrent than master. With Wen Lanfeng's support, no one dares to touch him openly." Man Hu said, "It's hard to say if he goes out. It's safe in cornucopia, don't worry too much." Yan Juexing smiled and avoided the topic. Yu Qianqiu is really rich. He had spent a lot of money on the two women on this trip. It seems that he values those two women very much. This guy is ruthless and shameless. He doesn't seem to be easy to deal with. I didn't expect him to have such a tender side. Could it be that his weakness is his women? I can see that you are very concerned about Yu Qianqiu. It's not a normal kind of concern." Man Hu said. Yan Juexing turned his head and looked at him. There was a heart-palpitating indifference in his eyes. Then he returned to calmness and said with a smile, "He and I are old enemies. Thanks to him, my family can't reunite until now. What's more, second senior brother's enmity is also here." After seeing the change in his eyes, Man Hu's heart trembled slightly. When Yan Juexing first cultivated the demonic book, he found it difficult to control his emotions, and often had this kind of eyes. Later on, as he cultivated for a long time, he was able to control it. However, whenever this expression appeared in his eyes, it meant that he was very unhappy. Man Hu didn't say anything else. He felt that Yan Juexing's desire for Yu Qianqiu wasn't as simple as revenge. Ever since Yan Juexing frequently inquired about Yu Qianqiu's news, the world's #1 expert below the soul formation stage has appeared. Let's go and see what else he wants to do. Yan Juexing stood up and left the table. Man Hu turned his head around and saw Yu Qianqiu looking around for a while before leaving Wen Clan's shop with another person. Mo Xiaojun followed behind Yu Qianqiu. He didn't know what he was going to do, but since Niuya told them to listen to him, they didn't dare to have any objections. Moreover, Yu Qianqiu's background wasn't simple either, so it wasn't too bad for them. What they saw in the Wen family's shop shocked the four of them. Obviously, their relationship with Wen Lanfeng and the others wasn't ordinary. Yu Qianqiu didn't stop all the way. He wasn't interested in the dazzling array of goods on the street at all. After accompanying Furong and Zi for half a day, he spent more than 1 billion yuan. Now he didn't even want to look at the shops on the street. One look would bring back painful memories. It was really painful, so he might as well not see it and not be annoyed. In fact, money was a small matter. It wasn't like it was robbed by others. What else could he say when his woman spent it? Although Zi wasn't his woman, they were all on the same side. After spending it, he could earn it back. If he couldn't earn it back, it was because he was useless. He still had this bit of magnanimity. However, what really annoyed him was Yanyu. Yanyu's miserable appearance when she left had been lingering in his mind. They walked to a fork in the street and turned straight out. The two of them came to the periphery of cornucopia. There were no shops in the area, only grids made of lime powder. Each grid was about 2 square meters, and there was a stall in each of them. Looking around, it seemed to be even more lively than the central area of cornucopia. There were people lingering in various stalls everywhere. There were probably many people who wanted to find treasures here. Sir, are you also here to find treasures? Mo Xiaojun followed behind him and asked. I don't have that kind of taste. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, I'm here to set up a stall. I have to earn back the money I spent today. Mo Xiaojun was stunned. The #1 expert below the demigod stage actually wanted to set up a stall. Wasn't that too degrading? He looked behind him and kindly reminded, Sir, there are many eyes behind you. They seem to be following you. Pretend I didn't see them. Let them follow me. What can they do to me? I still have to rely on them to advertise later. I guarantee my business will be booming. Yu Qianqiu stopped and looked into the distance. He rubbed his chin and said, Why are there no more stalls? Mo Xiaojun heard him and looked around. Coincidentally, he saw an empty space not far to the left. He pointed and said, Sir, there's one there. I'll go rent it for you. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it and waved his hand. Stop. It's too expensive here. The rent for a day is 10 high-grade spirit stones. Come, let's go to the edge. The rent there is only 1 high-grade spirit stone a day. There were 2 people who were pretending to follow them. They almost fainted when they heard that. They couldn't help but complain to Yu Qianqiu. They thought, We followed you around the treasure bowl today. You're so extravagant. The spirit stones you throw out can crush a cultivator to death. Now even 10 high-grade spirit stones are expensive? Who are you trying to fool? Did he notice us? It's okay. I still have some spirit stones. I'll rent the stall for you. Mo Xiaojun said kindly. Niuyid gave the 4 of them a lot of money. No need. I have money, but I can't spend it recklessly. Yu Qianqiu sighed. The women in my family are already extravagant. If I spend more, I'll be a prodigal. I have no choice. I can only save it and let her squander it. I can't let her suffer even if I have to suffer. Besides, our goods are good. We don't have to worry about not being able to sell them. It doesn't matter if the stall is a little bad. Mo Xiaojun quickly shut up. This master was a man with his own ideas. He didn't need him to make decisions for him. The 2 of them walked to the edge of the treasure bowl and strolled around. In the end, they found that the expensive areas were still empty. But the stalls here were all occupied. It seemed that the majority of the poor were still poor. There were many people who wanted to save money. Actually, Yu Qianqiu's position was quite conspicuous. Whether it was a buyer or a seller, they were all quietly sizing him up. After all, he was the famous Yu Qianqiu. Someone didn't understand, and quietly asked the person next to him who he was. The person next to him turned around and made a butcher's gesture at him. He said softly, Butcher. The latter opened his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else. He used his eyes to observe carefully. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked around. Was he looking for someone to rent with? Or was he looking for someone he didn't like to chase away? Senior, do you want to buy something? Someone suddenly spoke behind him. Although he didn't know if he was called, he still looked back and saw a familiar person nodding and bowing to him. Yu Qianqiu turned around and squinted his eyes to stare at him. This person. He was familiar, but he wasn't familiar either. He was the itinerant cultivator called Yi Chung that he met outside the plum garden of Ghost Manor. They had met a long time ago when they were on Supporting Immortals Island. Last time, he intentionally avoided him because he was Neo Yud. This time, he took the initiative to greet him, because he was Yu Qianqiu now. Interesting. Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled at him. I remember seeing you before. He didn't expose him, and started to size up the things he was selling. Yi Qing bit his lips excitedly. His eyes actually turned slightly red. Senior Yu actually still remembers me. We only met once on Supporting Immortals Island. To Yu Qianqiu, there was nothing worth looking at in the stall. On a piece of gray cloth, there were more than 10 stones of different colors. Some were black, and some were mixed with shiny things. After looking at it for a while, he still couldn't understand what it was. He guessed that it was some kind of ore. The highest price was only 9 superior-grade spirit stones. He didn't know where this person dug it out, and used it to cheat money. Yu Qianqiu bared his teeth and said, "What's your name?" "Senior Yu, my name is Yi Chung," Yi Qing said respectfully. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "Can I discuss something with you?" Yi Qing was stunned and immediately asked, "Please speak. How about I rent this stall with you?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Yi Qing immediately let out an ah, and thought that he had heard wrongly. After he reacted, he nodded and said, "Senior can say whatever you want. Then I won't stand on ceremony." Yu Qianqiu stretched his arm, and first collected all the small wooden signs with the price tags on the stall. Then, he stacked the pile of broken stones to one side. After emptying half of the space, he took out pots of fresh flowers from his storage bag. There were a total of 10 pots. The flowers were orchids. The strange thing was that the thin and long leaves were tender and beautiful blood red. There was also a faint smell of blood. There were 7 pure white flowers on top of them. The blood-red stamens clustered around the white petals. The whole thing gave off a pale feeling of blood. These 10 pots of flowers gave off an evil feeling. Then, he took out a wooden board, and wrote a bunch of words on the board with a fiery red glow on his finger. The people at the side could smell the burning wood. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the ground with a kacha sound. He looked at Yi Chung, and then at the pile of broken stones. Then, he took out another wooden board, and wrote a bunch of words on it. After he finished writing, he stuck the board into the pile of broken stones as well. After that, Yu Qianqiu clapped his hands, and pulled out 2 chairs from his storage bag. He placed them behind the stall, and sat down with his legs crossed. He raised his hand, and gestured for Yi Chung to sit as well. Yi Chung did not dare to disobey. He nervously wiped his butt and sat down. The latter was nervous and excited. He did not expect to be on equal footing with Senior Yu. Mo Xiaojun looked at the words on the 2 boards, and was speechless. He took a few steps and stood behind the 2 chairs. Yi Chung wanted to give up his seat, but was stopped by Mo Xiaojun. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu, and gestured for him to listen to him. Yu Qianqiu was setting up a stall on the street. There was an uproar. The idle crowd walked over quickly to see what he was selling. Chapter 634. In the blink of an eye, the stall was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone tiptoed to squeeze in. The other stalls on the side suffered, and they were trampled by pairs of feet. However, they were humble, so they didn't dare to say anything. They couldn't continue, so they had to temporarily close their stalls and watch the bustle. When someone saw the 10 pots of orchids, his eyes immediately lit up. He obviously recognized them. However, not many people recognized it, so they all looked at the wooden sign, only to see that it was written, 7-star blood orchid, sold in large quantities, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant. Honest to the old and young, no bargaining. It's 7-star blood orchid. Sold in large quantities? So many. Someone from Treasure Tower seems to be buying one for 20 million. Everyone looked at the sign inserted next to the stone, which read, "Rare or priceless, the highest bidder gets it." There were people who had seen these stones in Yi City's stalls before. At that time, the highest price was only 9 top-grade spirit stones. How did it become priceless in the blink of an eye? Those who recognized these ores sighed in their hearts, but they couldn't point it out in front of Yu Qianqiu. However, There were also many people who were tempted by these stones. They could be sold together with the 7-star blood orchid, and they were priceless, so they must be good things. Don't push forward anymore. If you step on the things in the stall, don't blame me for being rude. Yu Qianqiu sat with his legs crossed and warned the crowd coldly. The people in front immediately squeezed back. What a joke! This butcher was a master who killed without batting an eye. He even dared to offend the forces of various countries. What crazy things did he not dare to do? Yi City looked at Yu Qianqiu, and then looked at the onlookers. He was very excited. Senior Yu was Senior Yu. He was so majestic wherever he went. Unfortunately, Fuxian Island couldn't keep such a talent. There were many people watching, but no one bought it at present. Yu Qianqiu silently looked at those who quietly squeezed out of the crowd and left quickly. He was not worried that the things couldn't be sold. The price was so high that ordinary people couldn't afford it. Even if he couldn't sell them, it didn't matter. He didn't think that he could make much money by selling so many blood orchids. What he had now was money. This time, he had obtained a total of 46 billion high-grade spirit stones from Imbaikong, which was enough to feed the people in Utopia. Moreover, he had a pile of top-grade and divine-grade spirit stones as his trump card, so he did not have to worry about not having enough money to spend. Moreover, he could more or less earn enough pocket money to cover his expenses. He just wanted to see who was buying a lot of 7-star blood orchids. He thought that he knew the function of 7-star blood orchids better than the average person. No matter what, there was no need to buy a lot of 7-star blood orchids. There was something strange about it. In terms of who had a large number of 7-star blood orchids, there was probably no one who had more than him. The spiritual herb garden in Utopia was like growing cabbages. Therefore, he deliberately offered such a high price to test the market. If there was still someone willing to spend a lot of money to buy it, then the buyer's motive was questionable. Who was it? The news that Yu Qianqiu was sharing a house and setting up a stall soon spread in cornucopia. When Lanfeng dismissed the person who reported the news and turned to ask the other two, setting up a stall? What does Yu Qianqiu want to do? Nongzhu also shook her head in confusion and said, "This kid talks all day long and does all kinds of unimaginable things. Who knows what he wants to do? Strange, where did he get so many 7-star blood orchids to sell?" Selling a lot of 7-star blood orchids? Lu Yanqing paused and said softly, "Spirit Feng Valley also raised one of the 7-star blood orchids. I have been studying it and found that this kind of spiritual herb is very magical. When it is refined with different spiritual herbs, it can produce different miraculous effects. It seems that there is infinite potential to be unearthed. Unfortunately, the cultivation period is too long, and I dare not use it freely. I only pluck a leaf every once in a while to study it, mainly because I am afraid of hurting it." As he spoke, he looked at Nongzhu and said, "This thing is very hard to come by. I also want to buy a few from Yu Qianqiu, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. To me, it is a little too high. Nongzhu, can you help me talk to Yu Qianqiu and ask him to sell me some at a lower price? You also know that my Spirit Feng Valley is not like other places. We have almost no income and can't get so much money. Just think of it as I owe him a favor. Or I can exchange some rare elixirs with him." When Lanfeng and Nongzhu looked at each other, everyone knew that alchemy was the strength of Spirit Feng Valley, but it was hardly involved in trading. Moreover, Spirit Feng Valley's medical skills were the best in the world, but they never profited from it. They had always treated people in the world for free, including those secular mortals. Therefore, compared to other forces, Spirit Feng Valley was really poor. The disciples in the sect almost didn't use spirit stones for cultivation, but took elixirs. But it was also because of this that they won the respect of the world. Cultivators who owed them a favor, if they had the opportunity to get good spirit herbs, would give them to her free of charge. Even though secular mortals knew that Spirit Feng Valley liked all kinds of herbs. So if they occasionally came across some unknown herbs in the deep mountains and wilderness, they would send them to Spirit Feng Valley without any complaints, regardless of whether they were useful or not. In this way, Spirit Feng Valley and everyone formed a relationship of mutual dependence. In addition, Spirit Fong Valley never participated in the battle of the cultivation world, so it was not a threat to everyone. Everyone was happy to live in harmony with it. After all, they might one day need to ask Spirit Fong Valley for help. Fighting and killing, it was inevitable to suffer some incurable injuries. Even the well-known old fox, Een Bai Kong, would send a large number of spirit herbs at a fixed time every year for free. Using rare elixirs to exchange with him? Nongju murmured with a strange expression. She thought to herself, is there a lack of rare elixirs in that guy's hands? He can even refine those legendary heaven-defying elixirs by himself. I really don't know if the rare elixirs in your hands will catch his eye. What? Is there a problem? Lu Yanqing asked. Nongju shook her head and said with a wry smile, I trust you too, so I won't hide it from you. Lu Yanqing, if you exchange elixirs with him, I'm afraid he won't be interested in your elixirs. To be honest, that kid himself is a genius in alchemy. Some of the elixirs he refined can be called heaven-defying. His attainments in this aspect may not be lower than yours. What's more, this guy has a lot of unorthodox ways. He can always get some rare spirit herbs. You should be able to see it from the large number of 7-star blood orchids he set up today. He is also a master in alchemy. When Lan Feng was a little surprised, seeing Nongju nodding, he could not help but say, I really didn't see it. At such a young age, his cultivation is already outstanding among his peers, and he is full of wisdom and talent. I didn't expect him to be proficient in alchemy. Given time, it will be amazing. As an experienced person, he knew that it was impossible for a person to be distracted to do too many things. There were specializations. If one was good at one thing, the others must be weaker. It was rare to see someone like him who was so good at everything. When Lan Feng had to admire Bai Changchun's vision for accepting disciples again, Lu Yanqing was stunned. Thinking of Niu Yid's ability to refine limit-breaking pill and 7 treasures pill, she knew that what Nongju said was true. But as for what Nongju said, that Yu Qianqiu had a lot of unorthodox ways, she somewhat did not believe it. It was estimated that Yu Qianqiu could get all kinds of rare spirit herbs because of Bai Changchun. It should be known that the vast demon domain was like a virgin land that had not been unveiled. How could there be a lack of all kinds of spirit herbs in it? It could be seen from the fact that Yu Qianqiu could get so many 7-star blood orchids. Yanqing, why don't I buy 10 for you? When Lan Feng said with some apprehension, he knew that the result of saying this would be rejected. It had always been like this for many years, but it involved such a large number of spirit stones. Who would have the nerve to ask Yu Qianqiu to give it for free? Robbing? That was even worse. Not to mention that Lu Yanqing would not accept it. Just the serious consequences of robbing Bai Changchun's disciple was not something that anyone could bear. Sure enough, Lu Yanqing shook her head and said, I appreciate your kindness. I'll talk to him myself. If he doesn't want to, then forget it. I won't force him. Well, let me go find that kid. Nongju waved her hand and said, It's just a few 7-star blood orchids. It's not as complicated as you think. If he has more, let him give some for free. Lu Yanqing, you owe him a favor. Don't mention exchanging elixirs for them. In fact, Nongju really didn't want to open his mouth. Some time ago, he got a sword from the immortal world from Yu Qianqiu. If he said it was a betrothal gift, he could comfort himself. Later, Ziyi spent so much money from him. He could also comfort himself by saying that it was right. His daughter was ready to be given to him. It was nothing to spend some money from him. But then he asked him for a batch of limit-breaking pills and 7 treasures pills. Now he had to ask Yu Qianqiu for a few 7-star blood orchids. No matter how thick-skinned Nongju was, he felt a little embarrassed. He asked for things from the younger generation, and they were all valuable things. It was a little shameful. Taking advantage of others was not like this. He was not at the point where he could be slaughtered, right? What's more, when Yu Qianqiu left before, he said that he was going to earn back the money his daughter spent. So he set up a stall to sell blood orchids. The disciple of Bai Changchun, the world's #1 master, was forced to set up a stall to sell things. As a result, when the things were put out, he took a fancy to them and asked them for free. How could he ask for it? Originally, He was very unhappy that Yu Qianqiu and the woman in the sleeping spring building were together. He was also full of anger, and wanted to find an opportunity to teach this kid a lesson. But he was short of a hand. If he opened his mouth, the guy who only cared about money would lose hundreds of millions in vain. How could he mention the woman in the sleeping spring building? It should be known that the kid was not a good person to talk to. At that time, he could shut him up with one sentence. But seeing the two friends in a dilemma, he couldn't bear it, so he had to agree to this matter. But the consequences of agreeing to this matter, he was afraid that some things would have to be turned a blind eye to Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 635. It was impossible for the World Commerce Association to not know about such an uproar. On the God of Wealth Peak, Sikongju reported this matter to his master, who knew that after Yin Baikong heard this, he didn't seem to find it strange at all, and only nodded to indicate that he understood. Instead, he was more interested in the process of Hu Yuntian's disturbance at Sleeping Spring Loft, especially when he heard that there was a beauty even more beautiful than Yinyu. His eyes flickered, and he asked a few more questions. Sikongju went down the mountain with doubts in his heart. Could it be that his master already knew about the 7-star blood orchid? 200 million for one stock. Isn't he afraid of breaking his own teeth? This brat really dares to quote a price, but this is his style. Yin Baikong stared at the foot of the God of Wealth Peak, and recalled the scene of Yu Qianqiu trying to hide and sell the 7 treasure pills. Comparing the past and the past, he realized that this fellow was indeed extraordinarily greedy. Yin Baikong gazed into the distance from the foot of the mountain and muttered to himself, to be able to take out so many 7-star blood orchids at once. It seems that this is the benefit that Niu Yud gave him. The immortal world is indeed the immortal world. The rare spirit herbs of the mortal world are probably nothing much over there. Otherwise, how could they sell so much? After some consideration, he summoned Jing Yuankong and gave him 3,007 treasure pills for him to arrange the sale. As for the rest, Yin Baikong prepared to leave it for the World Commerce Association's own use. After the next batch of goods arrived, he would consider the sale according to the situation. After repeating this a few times, he would have enough financial resources and spirit pills stored up. Once Bai Changchun entered the East Holy Land, without the most terrifying hindrance, the rise of the World Commerce Association would be unstoppable. After the news of Yu Qianqiu setting up a stall spread, the border area of Cornucopia instantly became bustling with people. Yan Juixing and Man who stood outside the crowd, because they were worried that someone would secretly attack them, they didn't dare to squeeze in to take a look. On this point, Yan Juixing was more or less not as bold as Yu Qianqiu. That fellow could still sit in a pile of enemies with his legs crossed and shout. Who was he afraid of? Yan Juixing and Man whose expressions turned serious when they heard that Yu Qianqiu had set up a stall to sell 7-star blood orchids. They felt that it was too much of a coincidence. Previously, they were still discussing with Bing Qingzi where they could get a large number of blood orchids. Now, Yu Qianqiu began to sell them in large quantities. It couldn't be more coincidental. However, the price was really ridiculously high, 200 million upper-level spirit stones per plant. Man who looked at the people coming and going and said with some worry, "If we wait like this, will someone buy it? It might be possible if the price was low, but the price of 200 million per plant is too high. Unless there is an urgent need, who would spend such a huge amount of money? Wasn't he selling them in bulk? Even if someone wants to buy it, it's impossible for them to buy it all," Yan Juixing denied. "That's true." Man who nodded his head, then slightly sighed and said, "Although the price is outrageous, but in order for you to master the devil arts as soon as possible, and have the ability to protect yourself, I'm afraid that Master will save the money to purchase the restriction-breaking Dan and 7 treasure Dan. Even if it is more expensive, he will still buy some." Yan Juixing was silent in thought. If my demonic technique can reach the great accomplishment stage early, this little money is nothing. But he wouldn't directly say this to Man Hu. But this is also good. At least Master doesn't have to violate the oath to go to the Wu clan in the Chinese cultivation world to find the blood orchids, Man Hu said with emotion. Yan Juexing heard this and suddenly narrowed his eyes. In his mind, he recalled the scenes of meeting Yu Qianqiu and Wu Lixue several times in the Wu clan. He said in a deep voice, "I understand, so it is him." "What?" Man Who asked with some doubts. Yan Juexing slowly explained, "I know who the Wu clan's 7-star blood orchids came from. I should have thought of it earlier, otherwise it wouldn't be so coincidental. Back when Yu Qianqiu was in the Wu clan happened to be auctioning the 7-star blood orchids. Later, I found it strange. Why did the Wu clan auction such rare spiritual herbs one after another? I haven't even heard of it in other places. Today, this guy just happened to have a bunch of 7-star blood orchids for sale. Connecting the two matters together, it is very clear." In fact, he had only guessed half of it. When the Wu clan first auctioned the 7-star blood orchids, Yu Qianqiu was just a buyer. However, after he brought the blood orchid back to Utopia, it bred a lot, which was why it was auctioned later on. "So that's how it is." Man Who nodded and said, "In that case, this guy must know where there is a large number of blood orchids. It would be good if we can get some information from him. After all, the more blood orchids you have, the better. Spending money to buy them isn't a solution. This guy's price is too high, and if we buy too much, our ice palace won't be able to afford it. Find a chance to meet him alone. I have a way to get it out of him," Yan Juexing said confidently. Man Whose eyes lit up. Just as he was about to say something, he heard someone laugh and say, "So Brother Man and Brother Yan are here too." The two of them turned around and saw it was none other than Hu Yuntian. Looking at his happy face, it seemed that the embarrassing incident at the Sleeping Spring Loft didn't affect him anymore. Hu Yuntian had 4 followers behind him. After the 3 of them greeted each other, Hu Yuntian looked at the crowded place and said with a smile, "Are the 2 of you here to watch the show? Why don't you go in and take a look? Squeezing with them is beneath my dignity." Man Who looked at the crowd in disdain and found a good excuse. "Haha, that's easy." Hu Yuntian waved at the 4 people behind him, and they immediately opened up a path in front of them. They kept shouting, "Make way, make way." When the people who were being chased saw that they were from the Cloud Palace, they all made way. "Please." Hu Yuntian waved at the 2 of them. The 2 of them looked at each other and didn't stand on ceremony. They followed him in. Yu Qianqiu's stall was set up for half a day. There were many people looking at it, but no one was interested in it. The 7-star blood orchid wasn't sold, but Yi Cheng's pile of broken stones were sold at a high price. They were sold for more than 50,000 high-grade spirit stones. Yi Cheng naturally knew that it was because of Yu Qianqiu, so he wanted to give him the spirit stones. But how could Yu Qianqiu take advantage of this? So he firmly refused. After being stared at for so long, Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. Just as he was comforting himself to be patient, he suddenly heard someone shouting to open up a path. Turning his head, he saw a few people walking over in an imposing manner. He didn't know Hu Yuntian, so he was stunned when he saw Man Hu and Yan Juexing. When Man Hu saw him, he couldn't help but think of his second brother's death. His expression didn't look good even if he wanted to. Instead, Yan Juexing cupped his hands and smiled. "Brother Yu, I didn't expect to see you here again." Hu Yuntian looked at both sides and asked despite knowing the answer, "So the 2 of you know each other?" Who didn't know that Yu Qianqiu and Yan Juexing were old enemies in China's cultivation world? Yu Qianqiu stood up and also cupped his hands and smiled. "I was wondering why my eyelids kept twitching today. So it's because an old friend is here. Brother Yan, I really missed you after we parted in China." His words didn't match, and no one knew if he was flattering or mocking. When he stood up, Yi Cheng couldn't sit still, and quickly stood up as well. Yan Juexing didn't mind. He had already experienced this guy's eloquence, and he had never taken advantage of him. Sparring with him was just looking for excitement. "This is East Country's Cloud Palace's Hu Yuntian, 3rd young master Hu." Yan Juexing introduced with deep meaning. He emphasized the name Hu Yuntian very clearly. He came to a conclusion today, and he wanted to verify if women were Yu Qianqiu's weakness. Wasn't there a rumor in China's cultivation world that the Temptress of 100 Charms was Yu Qianqiu's mistress? When Yu Qianqiu heard that this person was Hu Yuntian, his expression changed slightly. He glanced over coldly. "You're that Hu Yuntian who snatched people from Sleeping Spring Loft?" Yan Juexing knew it was as he expected, and he smiled without saying a word. Hu Yuntian was stunned, and he felt that something was wrong. Judging from Yan Juexing's tone, he didn't seem to like him, and he didn't know when he had offended Yan Juexing. He paused for a moment and smiled. "It was a moment of recklessness, and I've embarrassed myself in front of Brother Yu. On the other hand, Brother Yu's reputation as the #1 expert below spirit severing stage is something that I've long heard of." As he spoke, he glanced at Yan Juexing, and he realized that he had been tricked. Yu Qianqiu also glanced at Yan Juexing, and then looked around. He resisted the urge to make a move on the spot. He sat down on a chair casually, and said with an expressionless face, "I say, I'm currently doing business, and we'll talk again when I'm free. If you're not buying anything, please get out of the way. Don't hinder my business." Hu Yuntian's expression changed. He was used to being unreasonable, and this Yu Qianqiu made him lose face again, and again in public. He almost couldn't hold it in anymore. But he knew that when Lanfeng was currently in the cornucopia, and he had to endure it no matter what. After all, his father wasn't as powerful as when Lanfeng, who knew that his guards would overdo their duty, and they didn't understand their boss's spirit. One of the guards, who was probably the leader, shouted, "How dare you?" Hu Yuntian wanted to stop his men from being rude, but he was too slow. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows, and he didn't say anything else. He flicked his sleeve, and a group of green rays shot out. The guard was shocked. He didn't expect the other party to attack without saying a word. He was a disciple of the Yin Palace. Being caught in the crowd, it was difficult to dodge, and at such a close distance, the only place to dodge was the sky, so he immediately dodged up. Who knew that the other party had already expected it? He had just jumped up half a person's height when a figure fell from the sky, holding a big black saber, and slashed at his head. In a flash, a flying sword shot out to meet the enemy. Dang! The flying sword broke into two. The distance was too close, and he couldn't dodge in front, back, left, or right. The flying sword from below came again. The guard was frightened, and he had no choice but to use his protective aura chi to protect his body. However, he seemed to have forgotten what the big black saber in Yu Qianqiu's hand was. It was a fierce thing that had once caused a reign of terror. Puff! Ah! A scream sounded, and everyone watched in horror as the big black saber cut through the protective aura chi like a watermelon, and cut the guard in half. The process was complicated, but it happened in the blink of an eye. No one thought that Yu Qianqiu would dare to make a move in the cornucopia without any warning. Hu Yuntian, Yan Juexing, and Man Hu were also stunned. They didn't expect this guy to be so crazy. It wasn't until Yu Qianqiu killed the guard that the surrounding people reacted, and with a hua sound, they were afraid of being involved, so they all dodged. In such a crowded situation, the scene could be imagined. It was called a person colliding with another. Chapter 636. The figures scattered, but the few of them did not move. In the blink of an eye, the group of people had completely dispersed, retreating at least tens of meters away. Man Hu, Yan Juexing, Hu Yuntian, the remaining three guards, and Mo Xiaojun and Yicheng. The 8 of them looked at the two halves of the corpse. The intestines were scattered all over the ground, and the blood-red liquid was still flowing. The few of them still could not believe that this was true. An early-stage crossing tribulation cultivator was killed by Yu Qianqiu just like that. Among the 8 of them, Yu Qianqiu coldly snorted. He dragged a black saber that was even bigger than a person, and indifferently turned around to clean up the 10 pots of blood orchids on the stall. It seemed that his business could no longer continue. Hu Yuntian suddenly roared, "Yu Qianqiu, how dare you kill my Cloud Palace disciple?" He was originally ordered to come and pull Yu Qianqiu into the Cloud Palace. He did not expect such a thing to happen. Before he even started to pull people in, they had already become enemies. Yu Qianqiu turned around and put his saber on his shoulder. Behind him, tens of cyan flying swords rotated around. He expressionlessly stared at the corpse on the ground and said, I have killed many people. This is not the first time I have killed a Cloud Palace disciple. Furthermore, you overestimated yourself and dared to come out and shout at me. If you are not courting death, then what are you doing? Do you think I am easy to bully? Yan Juexing and Man Hu looked at each other. They both had the same thought. This guy is a complete lunatic. If you do not give a satisfactory explanation today, don't even think of leaving here alive. Hu Yintian angrily said. The three guards beside him all flew out with their flying swords. They floated in front of them, waiting for an opportunity. Mo Xiaojun did not say anything, and also released his flying sword. Yicheng also followed suit. He had seen Senior Yu's style today. That was called clean and neat. He even killed a Cloud Palace disciple without hesitation. He did not expect that he would be able to fight alongside Senior Yu today. This has nothing to do with the two of you. Scram. Yu Qianqiu turned around and shouted at the two. The two did not dare to disobey and slowly retreated. A satisfactory explanation? What a joke. It was clearly your subordinate who threatened me first. And now you want me to give you a satisfactory explanation? What if you're satisfied but I'm not? Yu Qianqiu sneered. How about this? Let's cut the crap. No one will be satisfied just by talking. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one? We'll fight to the death. Whoever dies will be unlucky. What do you think? Wow! The crowd was boiling. The atmosphere was pushed to the climax by Yu Qianqiu's words. It was 2F** King direct. Everyone was rubbing their fists. There was going to be a good show to watch. Hu Yintian was choked by this sentence. His senior brother Chu Dingfang had died at the hands of Yu Qianqiu in Dayang Kingdom. In terms of ability, he was slightly inferior to Chu Dingfang. How could he dare to accept the challenge? However, he had already spoken. If he did not accept it, he would not only lose face for himself, but also for his father Hu Changshou. Cornucopia wasn't small, but it wasn't big either. What happened here immediately spread. Just as Hu Yuntian's expression was uncertain, someone came to help him. Mu Lianqiu arrived quickly with 10 law enforcement guard disciples, and landed between Yu Qianqiu and Hu Yuntian. In just a short while, a large group of people appeared silently in the air. The people below raised their heads to take a look, and all of them immediately fell silent out of fear. Impressively, the various deity transformation stage lords had arrived. Mu Lianqiu, you came at the right time. Hu Yintian pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said, he killed my Cloud Palace disciple in public. This is your world commerce's territory. I hope the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia will give justice to my Cloud Palace. Bulsh *T. Yu Qianqiu pointed the blade directly at Hu Yuntian and said, it was clearly your Cloud Palace who bullied me first, hindered me from doing legal business here, and threatened me. I was forced to take action. The eyes of the masses are clear. Everyone saw this. I strongly request the law enforcement guard of Cornucopia to punish evil and punish these bullies. What a sharp-tongued junior. How dare you speak irresponsibly here? Someone suddenly spoke in the air. His voice was not loud, but every word entered everyone's ears. Everyone looked over. A gray-robed old man slowly floated into the air and stared down indifferently. Hu Yuntian was overjoyed when he saw this. It was none other than his father, one of the top 10 experts, a late-stage soul formation cultivator, Hu Changshou. He immediately led the 3 guards to salute. Yu Qianqiu was not a fool. Without thinking, he knew who it was from their actions. He was about to defend himself, but before he could speak, someone had already spoken. An indistinct voice traveled over. Hu Changshou, you're so awe-inspiring. Is it appropriate to use it on an early-stage tribulation passing junior? You didn't see what happened with your own eyes. How do you know he's speaking irresponsibly? Isn't he being a little overprotective? The soft voice was like stirring up waves, surging layer by layer and reverberating endlessly in Cornucopia. On God of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong wanted to personally attend the scene, but after hearing this voice, he paused and turned back to Sikongju, saying, it's not convenient for me to show up. You handle it, and keep in touch with me through voice transmission. Sikongju accepted the order and left. Most of the people below didn't know who the speaker was. But from the voice, they knew the speaker was not simple. Otherwise, he would not speak to Hu Changsha like this. Those who knew were slightly shocked. When Lanfeng's words were not false. He was indeed supporting Yu Qianqiu. Suddenly, 3 people appeared in the air and stood face to face with Hu Changsha. They were Wen Lanfeng, Lu Yanqing and Nongzhu. When Lanfeng stood in the middle, Hu Changsha's expression changed. He cupped his hands and squeezed out a smile, saying, "Brother Wen, Sister Lu Yanqing is also here, Nongzhu." He glanced at Bing Qingzi in the air not far away. Im Baikong did not even come. Among the 3, only Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. The other 2 looked down and saw that Yu Qianqiu was carrying a huge black saber. It was as if he was going to attack a city and fight a war. He was truly overbearing. Lu Yanqing glanced at the corpse at his feet and frowned slightly. When Yu Qianqiu saw that he had 3 backers, he immediately winked at Hu Yuntian, wondering if he should seize the opportunity to kill this guy. Hu Yuntian's face was slightly pale, knowing that he would not be able to get away with it today. Mu Lianqiu and the others who were sandwiched between the 2 looked at each other, knowing that this matter was no longer up to them to handle. At this moment, Bing Qingzi flashed to Hu Changsha's side. He knew that it would be inappropriate if he did not come out. Im Baikong did not come. If he hid at the side and watched Hu Changsha alone, this alliance would become a big joke, and he would also lose face. It's normal for there to be some friction between the younger generation. There's no need to muster a large force. Bing Qingzi first said some words to smooth things over, then turned his head and shouted, "Sikongju, how long are you going to wait? This is your World Chamber of Commerce's territory. Don't tell me you want to watch the show instead of coming out to mediate." A figure flashed over. Sikongju awkwardly bowed to them and said, "Greetings, seniors. May I know what happened?" "Don't talk nonsense." Bing Qingzi pointed down and said, "Cornucopia's law enforcement guards are down there. You can ask them yourself. If this matter is not handled fairly and something happens, you will be responsible for the consequences." Im Baikong did not want to offend anyone and hid. How could Bing Qingzi let him have his way? He immediately pushed the conflict over. Hu Changsha nodded knowingly. Sikongju smiled bitterly. There was no justice to speak of in this matter. He would offend whoever he made suffer. However, he had no choice. After all, the World Chamber of Commerce was the owner of this place. Hence, he braced himself and cupped his hands at them. "Seniors, please wait a moment. I will go down and take a look first." He went down in a flash and glanced at Yu Qianqiu, who was carrying a big saber. He thought to himself, "Why did you come out to set up a stall? Aren't you looking for trouble?" He then asked Mu Lianqiu in a deep voice, "What exactly is going on?" Mu Lianqiu bowed and said, "I have just arrived and have not figured out the cause of the matter." Even if he knew, he could not say it clearly. Otherwise, not only would he be embarrassed, his master would also be embarrassed. He would definitely punish him when he returned. The best outcome for this matter was to let it go unsettled. Sikongju nodded and looked at the people causing trouble on both sides. He said sternly, "How dare you cause trouble in Cornucopia? Explain the matter clearly. Otherwise, no matter who is behind you, you will be severely punished." It sounded like he was not bending the law for personal gain. When the surrounding ordinary cultivators heard this, they were in awe. The World Chamber of Commerce was indeed the World Chamber of Commerce. They were not afraid of power. However, to those soul formation experts in the air, they were well aware that it would be strange if this matter could be explained clearly. Sikongju was clearly trying to smooth things over. By saying such words, he was protecting the World Chamber of Commerce's face, and also letting the matter go unsettled. Swish! The big saber in Yu Qianqiu's hand was stabbed into the ground. The green flying sword on his back flashed into his sleeve. He raised his finger and said to Hu Yuntian and the rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even Man Hu and Yin Juexing were counted. He then cupped his hands at Sikongju and said, "Senior Sikong, there is no need to explain this matter. There are 6 of them, and only 1 of me. Anyone with the discerning eye can tell who is bullying who. They are clearly taking advantage of their power to bully others. Senior Sikong, you have to uphold justice for me. I was only setting up a small stall here, but their group came to cause trouble. This guy lying on the ground even threatened me, so I had no choice but to kill him. What does it have to do with us? Man Hu and Yan Zhuixing's expression changed. This guy was pestering endlessly, and actually dragged the two of them into this. However, Bing Qingzi and Hu Changsha were both present. Both parties were allies. If they publicly said that they weren't on the same side, what would others think? There would be suspicions of being afraid of trouble. The one who would be the most embarrassed would probably be Bing Qingzi. You Qianqiu, don't talk nonsense here. Hu Yuntian said angrily. It was clearly you who spoke rudely first. You were also the one who killed him when there was a disagreement. You still dare to frame us. I spoke rudely first. Yu Qianqiu sneered. It seems like I have always been polite. Why don't you tell me what offensive words I've said? You. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. Yu Qianqiu smiled contemptuously. Can't say it right? Let me say it for you. I clearly said that I am currently doing business, and we can slowly chat when I have time. If you are not buying anything, then please move aside and don't hinder my business. Very courteous words. Could it be that these words are also called rude words? You guys are bullying others with your power. Chapter 637. At this point, Yu Qianqiu angrily pulled out the big black blade from the ground. He waved the blade twice and pointed it at Hu Yuntian's nose. Senior Xikong, the truth is in front of us. Hurry up and capture these evildoers and punish them severely. Don't let them escape. Looking at his impatient look, it was as if he wanted Xikong Ju's help to capture them. Xikong Ju couldn't help but roll his eyes. What you said is the truth. You want to capture them? In the air, a fatty dressed in blue hugged his belly as he laughed. This person was none other than Pei Fong. Actually, there were many people who wanted to laugh. Nongzhu was one of them. However, she forced herself not to laugh out loud. The corner of Wen Longfeng's mouth curled into a smile. Hu Yuntian was so angry that he almost became muddle-headed. He immediately roared. Who said we were going to run? If you're not going to run, then plead guilty obediently and save us the trouble. Yu Qianqiu waved his blade at Xikong Ju and the rest. In the blink of an eye, it became us. It seemed like they were going to carry out the law together. Xikong Ju could tell that Hu Yuntian cultivated under Hu Changsha's protection. Usually, everyone would give in to him. No one dared to talk back to him. He could be unreasonable, but he wasn't good at talking. In the end, he met Yu Qianqiu today. It seemed like he was going to be muddle-headed from anger. If he allowed Yu Qianqiu to continue, Hu Yuntian would definitely plead guilty and submit to the law. This was not the result that Yu Qianqiu wanted. Xikong Ju coughed and said, Hu Yuntian, are Yu Qianqiu's words true or false? He was reminding Hu Yuntian to explain himself. It was useless to keep talking to Yu Qianqiu. The matter wasn't even clear. If he talked about pleading guilty, wouldn't he be looking for trouble? Hu Yuntian. Yu Qianqiu pointed with his blade again, and quickly snatched the topic. He shouted, If you have the ability, swear to the heavens that what I just said was false. Hu Yuntian was at a loss for words. He really didn't dare to swear an oath, because what Yu Qianqiu said before was indeed true. However, the tone he used when it happened was completely different from the tone he used when he explained it in front of everyone. Yan Zhuixing and Man Hu glanced at each other. This Hu Yuntian might seem smart, but if it wasn't for his father, he wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Idiot! Hu Changsha's face darkened, and he immediately scolded. Why do you care what he said? Just talk about yourself. What does it matter if you say black is white? I'm here. What are you afraid of? He just couldn't figure it out. How could a person who usually looked quite shrewd become like this after being angered so casually? After being scolded by his old man, Hu Yuntian suddenly came to his senses. The fury in his eyes gradually calmed down, and he regained his shrewd appearance. He said to Xikong Ju in a clear voice, Senior Xikong, Yu Qianqiu is talking nonsense. Not a single word is true. It is a fact that he killed people in cornucopia. Everyone saw it. Please punish him severely, Senior. These two completely different reactions were because everyone could tell that he was being guided. But this was exactly what Sikong-ju hoped for. Sikong-ju tilted his head and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, Hu Yuntian said that everything you said was a lie. What else do you have to say?" Yu Qianqiu raised his head and looked at Hu Changshou in the sky, then looked at Hu Yuntian, and revealed a mocking expression of exasperation at Hu Changshou's failure to meet his expectations. He shook his head and sneered. This person is already shameless to the point of lying with his eyes wide open. What else do I have to say? If I continue talking, it will just be a result of not acknowledging each other. It's simply a waste of saliva. Senior Sikong, why don't you be more direct? Sikong-ju let out an "oh," and his eyes flickered as he asked, "How to be more direct?" Yu Qianqiu stared at Hu Yuntian and sneered, causing Hu Yuntian's hair to stand on end. Suddenly, he saw the blade in his hand pointing at him and said, "Hu Yuntian, I'll still say the same thing. There's no meaning in arguing with your glib tongue. Why don't you and I fight one-on-one? And we won't rest until one of us is dead. Whoever dies will be unlucky. How about it?" The surrounding crowd went into an uproar again. This madman's killing desire was very strong. He was indeed worthy of the title of butcher. It seemed like he really wanted to slaughter Hu Yuntian. If he didn't have the confidence to slaughter Hu Yuntian, he definitely wouldn't keep mentioning about fighting one-on-one. Although no one said it, they actually hoped that Hu Yuntian would accept the challenge. They just treated it as watching the show. In the crowd, there was a pair of bright eyes. Yin Yu looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. With the commotion caused, it was impossible for her not to have heard the news. Originally, she didn't want to come, but for some reason she still came. Furong, Ze, and the rest were currently anxiously pacing around the Wen clan's shop. They really wanted to come over and take a look, but before Nongzhu came out, he ordered them not to come out. Hu Yuntian was challenged by him again, and his expression was dark and gloomy, showing signs of going berserk. If he still didn't accept the challenge, how would he still have the face to mingle in the cultivation world? Right at this moment, Hu Changshou transmitted his voice. "Is your face more important or your life more important? Don't let your imagination run wild, and push the problem to Sikong-ju." Hu Yuntian took a deep breath and cupped his hands towards Sikong-ju. "Senior Sikong, cornucopia is the territory of the World Commerce Guild. What do you think?" Sikong-ju decisively rejected. "Cornucopia doesn't allow private fights. I think this matter will be investigated one day. Why don't we put it aside for now, and deal with it after the matter is investigated?" "Hee, what if the matter is never investigated clearly?" Laughter came from the sky. Pei Fong's fat face shook as he said, "In my opinion, Yu Qianqiu's idea is not bad. Instead of dragging it on, it's better to fight to the death. Once and for all, there won't be any trouble in the future." Hu Changshou and Bing Qingzi swept a cold glance over. Pei Fong was obviously up to no good. The latter met their gaze and smiled indifferently. Anyway, no matter who died, he wouldn't lose anything. It seemed that Hu Yuntian was more likely to die. If he could take the opportunity to attack Hu Changshou, why wouldn't he do it? If Yu Qianqiu died, it would be even better if Wen Lanfeng did something else. Yu Qianqiu naturally knew that this damn fatty was up to no good by fanning the flames. But he really wanted to kill Hu Yuntian while Wen Lanfeng was here. After making up his mind, he sneered. "Hu Yuntian, since private fights aren't allowed in cornucopia, we might as well settle this outside. If you're afraid of me, you might as well bring your 3 guards with you. If you're still afraid," Dao Feng pointed at Yin Juexing and Man Hu and said, "It doesn't matter if the 6 of you come at me together. I'll definitely keep you company until death. How about it, do you dare?" When he was still at the nascent soul stage, he dared to fight with those at the end of the crossing calamity stage. Now that he was at the crossing calamity stage, there was nothing to be afraid of. In addition, after experiencing the beauty of the animal play, he believed that killing Hu Yuntian wouldn't be a problem. The reason why he also involved Yin Juexing was because he wanted to test his opponent's depth. If possible, he might as well take advantage of Wen Lanfeng's presence to get rid of this trouble in the future. This was simply a naked provocation. 1 against 6, almost forcing Hu Yuntian into a dead end. In the air, Hu Changsho's eyes narrowed. Yu Qianqiu had gone too far, and he couldn't help but get angry. Bing Qingzi also seemed to be a little tempted. Hu Yuntian and Man Hu, who were at the end of the crossing calamity stage, were not necessarily no match for Yu Qianqiu. Maybe he could take the opportunity to take revenge for his second disciple. Good! Pei Fong cheered. No wonder you're the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. You're really brave. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would even involve Bing Qingzi's disciple, so he was naturally excited. Lu Yanqing frowned at Yu Qianqiu's belligerent behavior. When Lanfeng seemed to be a little worried and asked Nongzhu, Yu Qianqiu is only at the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. Won't he underestimate his opponent? Nongzhu replied with a relaxed face. I don't know what he wants to do, but don't worry, he won't do anything that will cause him to lose. Man Hu took a step forward lightly. He also wanted to take the opportunity to take revenge for his junior brother. Unexpectedly, Yin Zhuixing grabbed him and walked to Hu Yuntian's side, saying with a smile, Brother Hu, Senior Pei has already said that Brother Yu is the #1 expert below the soul-forming stage. How can we defeat him so easily? It's not wrong for us to admit defeat to someone who can be praised by Senior Pei. Originally, he wanted to let Yu Qianqiu and Hu Yuntian do it. It had nothing to do with him, so he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu also involved him in Man Hu. If Hu Yuntian accepted the challenge, it would be inexcusable for them not to fight. Therefore, they came forward to help Hu Yuntian, the fool who was outwardly smart but inwardly stupid. In fact, it was not that Yin Zhuixing did not want to fight. In fact, he wanted to try the effect of his demonic power against Yu Qianqiu. The demonic power had been stimulated by Yu Qianqiu's words, and it was running automatically in his body. However, there were too many people watching. The power of the demonic power was extraordinary. Once he fought, he would definitely be exposed. Now that he did not have the ability to protect himself, he had to bear with it. After he got the 7-star blood orchid to improve his cultivation, everything would be easy. Although Hu Yuntian was angry at Yu Qianqiu's arrogance, he was still a little afraid of him. It should be known that the butcher in the cultivation world was famous for killing. Many experts at the final stage of the passing calamity stage had died in his hands. Now that Yin Zhuixing gave him a way out, he smiled calmly and said, Brother Yin is right. Since Senior Pei praised him so much, it's not wrong for us to admit defeat. He waved his hand heroically and said, I admit defeat and stop fighting. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He did not expect that they would admit defeat even after he had said so much. Pei Fong was stunned. He wanted to slap himself. If he had known earlier, he would not have interrupted. Hu Changshu glanced at Yu Qianqiu with a malicious gaze. Then he smiled at Wen Lanfeng and said, Brother Wen, the heroes are here to watch the show. If this matter continues, we as guests will not give face to the host. I think it's better to follow the host's idea and temporarily put this matter aside. We will talk about it after the investigation. What do you think? Although others thought that Yu Qianqiu had to listen to Wen Lanfeng did not think that he could be Yu Qianqiu's master. Just as he was about to use words to evade, he heard Lu Yanqing, who was beside him, say, Isn't it better to solve it peacefully? Why must we fight and kill? Wen Lanfeng was startled. He looked down and said, Yu Qianqiu, since they have admitted defeat, you should also take a step back. Let's talk about this later. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Without Wen Lanfeng's support, he did not have the ability to kill Hu Changshu's son in front of him. Moreover, there was Bing Chengzi eyeing him covetously. He glanced at Nongzhu, but Nongzhu also shook her head slightly. Damn it! Relying on others to support you is the most unstable thing. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. Let's wait and see. With a calm face, Yu Qianqiu put away the big black saber. He turned around and walked to the original stall. He took out pots of 7-star blood orchids and shouted to the crowd, selling 7-star blood orchids in large quantities. 200 million per plant. Those who are willing to buy, come quickly. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.